Chapter 507. Actually, the people of Rotterdam were very unlucky this time. If Duque had not crossed the wetlands to lure out the wings of death, the 3 young red dragons would not have been killed, and the Dragonmaw clan would not have been so tense. The young red dragons were not just any ordinary people. They were at least as strong as the chiefs in the tribe. It was no wonder the tribe was shocked when 3 of them died in a few days. Without that, Zulad would not have let the 100,000 tribes gather near Grim Battle. There was no need for Orgrim to hold a meeting at the tribe's gathering point. There were many things that were interconnected. Rotterdam, who had rashly intervened for the sake of their reputation, happened to see the 100,000 horses running around, and almost lost all their money. Not only was Orgrim leading the slaughter inside, but the situation outside was not quiet either. Zulad immediately flew his red dragon through the special entrance of the dragon tribe to the entrance below the fortress, and let the dragon breathe dragon breath at the portal. To put it bluntly, the portal was a condensation of magic power. If the brainless orcs used axes and hammers to attack it, even 10,000 people would not be able to do anything. But dragon breath was different. The essence of dragon breath was fire elemental energy. Although enough fire elemental energy would not destroy the portal, it would put a greater burden on it. The mages in the Dalagen were in a difficult situation. Who's attacking the portal? The mages found that their mana consumption was increasing. It was already difficult to maintain a portal that could transport dozens of people at the same time. But now it was even more difficult. Bastard! It's the red dragon again. Antonidas obviously knew what it was. King Tarina's face was drained of blood. The infantry could no longer break through the situation. If they wanted to change the situation, they would either have to sacrifice themselves and let the people at the door retreat, or they would have to send in an overwhelming force. No matter how he looked at it, the tribe was well prepared. He tried asking, "Can the Dalagen send in more mages?" Antonidas glared at him. "How dare you ask me to send my precious high-level mages into such a messy battle?" Mages were definitely treasured by the humans and the entire alliance. The Dalagen Academy mages, in particular, were the worst at messy battles. It was generally accepted that the way mages were used was to suppress their opponents in positional battles. Tarina's suggestion, in the ears of the Kirin Tor chairman, was like sending him to his death. It was time to test Tarina's courage. If they retreated like this, they would lose at least half of their elites and gain nothing. If they continued to send more troops, the situation might not be good. Instead, it might cause more experts to fall into the trap. Tarina's was not satisfied. That should have been a great opportunity for the Rotterdam Kingdom to make a name for themselves and show off their might. Why did Duke kill tens of thousands of elite orcs in a few moves? Why did it seem like sending the elites to their deaths when it was his turn? The old king's clenched fists trembled. There was no need for others to remind him that he had to make a decision. At this time, Antonidas suddenly thought of something and said, "Your Majesty, you don't have to be so pessimistic. When I opened the portal just now, I sensed the magical wave of Sir Marcus. He seems to be in grim battle." Hearing this, Tarina's, who understood the hidden meaning behind the words of the Archmage, almost vomited blood. He did not trust Duque and sent over 1,000 elites. But in the end, he was just pretending to attack for Duque? Wait a minute. Wasn't Duque about to die? How did he manage to sneak into the fortress while being surrounded by tens of thousands of orcs? This time, not only did the Rotterdam Kingdom's fists tremble, even his body was shaking. Tarina's was shocked. Lang and Anduin were overjoyed. The 2 brothers looked at each other and saw the joy in each other's eyes. Duque was still alive. Lang could not suppress his excitement and quickly went forward. "What's wrong with Duque? Can you sense his condition?" Antonidas nodded. "I don't know about his physical condition, but his magical wave is not weakened at all." Hearing this, all the kings were moved. It did not matter if Duque was about to die or not. At least he could fight. Those who had seen Duque in action knew that Duque could not be considered a Morning Star mage. In group battles, he was even crazier than many Radiant Moon mages. Moreover, his various miracles in the past always made people think positively of him. At this moment, The clouds above Grim Battle Fortress suddenly rolled back layer by layer, forming a huge hole in the sky. Endless fire poured down from the hole. The entire mountain top was covered in fiery red. Ancient dragons. Another primordial dragon had arrived at this time? Just how many ancient dragons did the horde control? How many ancient dragons did they control? Just as everyone's expressions changed again, the scene suddenly changed. No one had expected a gigantic red dragon to launch an attack on the young red dragons, hovering in the sky, as it descended from the sky. It was not the dragon breath unique to the dragon race, nor was it a melee attack. It was an endless magical attack. Ice fire, and arcane magic. The three violent offensive spells turned into a dazzling magic storm that blasted towards every red dragon that tried to stop it. What? Could this red dragon be from the Alliance? Everyone who witnessed this scene was dumbfounded. They couldn't figure out what was going on. Only Antonidas and the Dalajan looked to his side thoughtfully. The Kirin Tor counselors were missing one Krasis. That's right. The red dragon in the sky was Krasis, one of the 6 counselors in the Dalajan who had been in human form all this time. He was now the red dragon Claustras. Krasis fought hard in the sky. Even though he had already stepped into the ranks of the ancient dragons, he was not at ease when facing so many powerful compatriots. He was shocked to find that the young dragons had been brainwashed under the influence of the demon's soul. They unconsciously began to agree with the orc's orders. He was cautious when dealing with them, but they surrounded him without hesitation. Krasis gritted his teeth and dodged left and right in the sky. However, at this critical moment, he still sent a magical message to someone. Duke Marcus, I don't know what other trump cards you have, but I've used all the tricks I can. The rest is up to you. I'm counting on you. You must save Queen Alexstrasza. At this moment, Duque, who had fallen into a deep sleep at the secret passage of Grim Battle Fortress, suddenly opened his eyes. He replied with a magical message. Wait for me. Chapter 508. Krasis was in a sorry state, but he was extremely excited. Twisting left and right, he seemed to be on the brink of death, but he was able to play tricks under the siege of several young dragons. He used all sorts of unimaginable spells and agility that did not match his huge body to teach the young dragons how to fight. Even though his injuries were worsening, even though his actions were getting worse, there was still a fire burning in his chest. His fighting spirit was still boiling. One after another, the young dragons lost the ability to fight without being fatally injured. Krasis was still holding on because of a message from Duque. Wait for me. If someone else had sent it to him, he would have snorted. But the person who sent it was Duque, the most legendary young man in the entire Alliance, or even the entire Azeroth. These 2 words exuded a strange magic. These 2 words represented an unparalleled miracle. Krasis unleashed the strongest combat power he had in his life. At the entrance of the secret tunnel, Duque looked up at the sky. He could not see the intense battle in the sky from his angle, but he could tell from the continuous dragon roars that Krasis was doing well. Suddenly, he waved to the people below. Sasha, call everyone up. Sasha was stunned by this wave of his hand. It was not just her. No one knew why Duque was so confident after a nap. Of course, it could be imagined that Duque had used the surprise attack of the Lordaeron people and the unexpected red dragon as a cover for his real attack. But she felt that it was not that simple. Come up, I've gathered all the cards. Duque stood at the entrance. The strong mountain wind made Duque's magician robe flap loudly. His short hair made him look energetic. Most importantly, Duque's lips were curled up in a confident smile. Just as Sasha and the others sprinted towards the entrance, a large line of words appeared in the mental isolation zone that Duque had set up. Go, my little slave. It's time to save the Red Dragon Queen. Find her and recite the incantation, Azadalu. Alexstrasza shall receive the redemption she deserves. The long incantation was followed by a bewitching sentence. Duque pretended to be absent-minded, but a moment later, his thoughts seemed to return to the right track. Sasha and the rest did not stay too far away. In fact, after the people of the Rotterdam Kingdom started their attack, they were already less than 200 meters away from Duque. In a few moments, they had arrived in front of Duque. It was only a distance of less than 10 breaths, but Sasha was extremely agitated. Her perfectly plump breasts rose and fell rapidly. She couldn't care less about using her fingers to comb her scattered silver hair. She asked with great concern almost immediately, "Duque, are you all right?" "I'm fine, how about you?" Duque replied with a smile. I'm fine too." For some reason, looking at Duque's gentle and confident smile, Sasha felt flustered. This feeling became clearer with Duque's next words. "No, you're not fine. I feel like you're a little old." Her heart was beating very quickly. It was so powerful that she felt like her heart would jump out of her chest at any moment. After pulling the bowstring countless times, her usually steady hands were trembling for some reason. Sasha bit her lip. Her cheeks and neck were slightly red that she could not hide. Don't worry about me for now. Are you really all right?" "I was." When Duque said this, Sasha's heart skipped a beat. However, Duque's next words took a turn. "I'm fine after seeing you." You. Even if Sasha was really thick-skinned, she had to give in after being teased and attacked by Duque. Moreover, Sasha had never been thick-skinned. Sasha had arrived first with her high agility and speed. The other three had just climbed up the hill. Duque smiled and turned around elegantly. "All right, the best singer always goes on stage last. Let's not waste this precious opportunity. Everyone was here. Let's go." Everyone could feel Duque's surging confidence. No one knew where his confidence came from, but everyone believed it. He really couldn't figure out if this was a person's name, the shadow of a tree, or if Duke's body had really changed. "I'll go first." For once, Gavin Rad was not a spectator. He took out his shield and one-handed hammer, and prepared to open a path in the dark cave. "No need. We won't have any enemies before the little red dragon appears. F***ck. We still have to fight the red dragon." Apart from Marion, the other three were all shocked. Damn it. They really did not understand why the Red Dragon army was so obedient to the tribe. Gavin Rad cursed the tribe, but he did not try to persuade Duque. He was very clear about his position. He was just a worker. Working obediently would naturally be beneficial. Also, he was quite satisfied with his current situation. The group followed Duque through the dark, narrow and long cave. After about 4 or 5 minutes, the tunnel before them suddenly opened up. It was a huge funnel-shaped cave. They had just walked to a relatively open area, when the darkness ahead suddenly changed. There was nothing in front of them even with Sasha's night vision, but it was as if a black curtain had suddenly fallen. 2 golden vertical pupils larger than baskets appeared in front of the 5 frighteningly. His long and sharp fangs shone with a cold, violent light even in the darkness. Dragon. A red dragon that had used draconic magic to ambush itself. It was at least a young dragon. Not only did it fool Duque and Sasha, but it even fooled Marion. The powerful illusion, that did not have any magical fluctuations, instantly brought the entire team of 5 into its attack range. It smiled slyly. Even though it looked no different from the standard dragon breath of a dragon, its open mouth and upturned lips made it seem like it was smiling. It was laughing at the stupidity of humans and elves. It was also laughing at its own success. Everyone could foresee that in at most 2 or 3 seconds, the entire huge dark space would be completely covered by the red dragon's blazing dragon breath. Gavin Rad, Marion, Ronan, and Sasha all made their most instinctive defensive moves. Just then, an invisible aura was released from Duque's body. A kind of riding momentum, something that could be read as pretentious, was released by him. At the same time, he threw something out from his left hand. It was obviously from a huge spatial storage bag. After it left the storage bag, it suddenly became incomparably huge. In just a second, everyone, including the dragon opposite them, saw what it was. That was the ferocious dragon head of the 3rd-generation red dragon, Grizzla, who was the best at fighting. Chapter 509. This scene was very strange but also very funny. The 4 people around Duque were all panicking. They had almost activated their invincibility skills and fridges. Only Duque had his hands behind his back. He stood tall and straight like a pine tree, putting on a handsome show in the mountain wind. As for the other side, the mysterious red dragon, that had been prepared to greet Duque's group with a blazing dragon's breath was even funnier. More than half of the dragon's breath had come out of its throat, but it was swallowed back by the red dragon, as if it was swallowing saliva. What the heck? You can swallow the flames you spat out. Why don't you show what you eat and shit? Cough cough. After a while, the four people around Duque were embarrassed. They had thought that there would be a fierce battle. Who knew that after Duque threw out a dragon's head, the red dragon would give up? That's right. It really gave up. Actually, it was not the red dragon's fault. Ancient dragons were not cabbages that could be found anywhere they wanted. Kurtzla was the famous leader of the third generation of dragons in the Red Dragon army. Had he climbed a mountain of swords? Had he seen a pot of boiling oil? Had he seen someone swallow 10,000-year-old ice as ice cream? She did. See. After. That's right. That was what Kurtzla had done. Alright, Kurtzla, who didn't believe in superstitions and dared to try anything and kill anything, now had his dragon's head, which was bigger than a small house, appear in front of her. Seeing the arrogant Kurtzla's eyes wide open in anger, it would be strange if the little female dragon did not pee in her pants. Dragon's breath could not be swallowed easily. A large amount of dragon breath could not find a place to vent, and could only come out through the gaps of her teeth and nose, choking her half to death. She was so stunned that she did not dare to spray this dragon breath on Duke. His long snake-like neck quickly turned and spat the dragon's breath to the side. Cough! 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 The little female dragon choked so hard that her tears almost flowed out. Ronan, Sasha, Marion, Gavinrad. Silence. Dead silence. In the huge dark cave, only the sound of the little female dragon's bitter coughs could be heard. What the hell was this? Sasha and the other three looked at Duque with admiration that was beyond reason. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what Duque would do next. Duque slowly raised his right hand, palm facing upwards. Ronan, where's the little thing Krasis gave you? Give it to me. How did Duque know that Krasis had given him a small talisman? However, he did not hesitate. Duque was the leader of the team. Not only was he the leader of the team, but he was also the leader of half of the alliance. He admired and respected Duke very much, so he didn't hesitate to hand over Krasis's trinket to Duke, without the slightest hesitation. Krasis had told him that he couldn't give it to anyone else. Duque took it and casually tossed it away. The silver earring drew a beautiful arc in the air that cut through the darkness. It flew in front of the little female dragon, bounced twice on the ground and stopped moving. The little female dragon finally caught her breath. She looked at the trinket on the ground and was speechless. Of course she knew what the higher-ups meant. Duque's confident voice sounded again. Choose. Become the second Graz or do us a small favor. Duque's lips curled into a sinister smile. He seemed to be waiting for the little female dragon to reject him, so that he could publicly slaughter her. Who would have thought that the little female dragon would choose neither? Her huge yellow pupils rolled around as she spoke in the human language. I must be seeing things because I've been on too many missions recently. This won't do. I need to catch up on some sleep while I'm on sentry duty. With that, she swayed her huge body and curled up in a corner of the huge cave like a puppy. She curled up and slept. Yes, I'm sleeping. I didn't see anything. I don't care if you believe it or not. I believe it. That was what the little female dragon was implying. At this moment, the world seemed to fall silent. Windsor and the others were completely speechless. That worked. Was this guy a dragon or a profiteer selling fake goods in the antique market? Duque scared the dragon just like that, and it was terrified. Duque, who had retracted his dragon head, should have led everyone over. However, Duque suddenly turned around quickly and took a step towards the little female dragon. His right hand even shone with the light of magic. No matter how you look at it, it looks like Duque is about to make a move. As expected, the little female dragon, who had been pretending to sleep, jumped up. Almost all the scales on her body stood up. She looked like a frightened cat. Who knew that Duque would raise his hand and cast a small illumination spell? Duque looked calm, as if he had done nothing. No, I just wanted to ask. Do you know where your queen is trapped? Which path is closer? The little female dragon was aggrieved. The little female dragon wanted to kill someone. Tears almost spurted out of her eyes. I'm a young dragon over 1,000 years old. You can't bully a dragon like this. She cursed Duke's ancestors in her heart and pointed at a cave entrance. Alright, she couldn't even pretend to sleep anymore. The little female dragon could only watch warily as Duke left. The moment they left the dragon cave, the four heaved sighs of relief. Yes. Ronan knelt. Marion knelt. Windsor knelt. Gavinrad knelt too. Boss, you really scared me to death. I was ready to fight a dragon. Gavinrad looked like he was wiping sweat, but there wasn't a drop on his forehead. Duke shrugged. You can't. We've all seen this dragon. When we killed the first dragon, she was the one that patrolled over. She didn't have the courage to fight then, and she definitely won't now. Windsor was convinced by Duke's words. Alright, where do we go now? Go down. The others didn't know where to go, but Deathwing did. This guy was extremely annoyed as he muttered silently, directly crossing space and entering Duke's mental isolation layer. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that even if Duke closed his eyes, he wouldn't get lost. Suddenly Duke sighed. He took out a handful of magic crystals from his storage bag and handed them to Ronan. Sir, this is too valuable. Ronan didn't know what to do. First, I need your fighting power. Second, isn't this a good chance to improve your spellcasting? Kill all the beastmen you see later. Duke was right. Orgrim couldn't let the Horde's trump card be destroyed by the Alliance just like that. In fact, after leaving the Dragon Cave, Duke's group started encountering large numbers of beastmen guards. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The four of them were dumbfounded as they looked at Duke, who was strolling leisurely in front of the orc guards that kept surging out, as if they had seen a ghost. Chapter 510. Noises, screams, wails, and all sorts of other noises came from the surface. In the narrow cave, the echoes could be heard from far away. Everyone in the team could hear that the humans were at a disadvantage. Compared to the excited cheers of the orcs, the cries of the humans were filled with tragedy. Hang in there. Fight as hard as you can. Was this what people who had the upper hand would say? The pessimistic aura coming from the vent above their heads became a different scene when it came to the people in front of them. Duke walked quickly, and a wave of cold air, with a radius of more than 30 meters, moved along with Duke's movements. The four people walking inside did not feel anything, but once the orcs touched it, there would be a crisp and beautiful sound of ice freezing. Without even looking, the hand of magic floating around Duke would shoot an ice spear at his face. In the frozen state, the attack power of the ice spear was extremely exaggerated. The huge mana produced by the magic chain reaction was like adding fuel to the fire, enough to turn most of the orcs into corpses in an instant. Even killing pigs and dogs was not as easy as Duke. Above their heads, the elites of the Rotterdam kingdom were utterly defeated. The portal had collapsed, and the remaining humans had to fight their way to the narrower side roads, relying on the terrain to resist. They were like blind flies in the complicated tunnels of the grim battle fortress. It could be imagined that there would only be a small number of lucky people who would be able to kill their way out and escape in the end. In the underground tunnel, Duke was chasing the tribe like rabbits. This was quite ironic. Duke pushed forward quickly, and of course, did not forget to help the two poor guys. Above them, Abendis and Sidan Dathrahan were still fighting. The two of them were no longer in the same position as before. Even if they did not want to admit it, they had to admit that the Rotterdam raid was over. Just this loss alone was enough to make King Tarina sleepless for many months. While Orgrim was leading the chieftains on a killing spree, Sidan activated her invincibility and used the holy light from Wrath to force away the two chieftains who were fighting her and rushed to Abendis' side. On the battlefield, Sidan couldn't care less about his chivalrous demeanor. He directly smashed the back of the head of a chief who was attacking Abisti with his hammer and roared, "Go! Where do you think you're going?" Abendis, who was covered in wounds, also forced back the remaining chief with a single move. "Anywhere is fine, don't wait for death here." Sidan was ready to risk it all. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from the fishy wind. It was a sound that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Yo, I'm Duque. If you're not dead, then get down here. This young master will bring you guys to turn the tables. Puff. Pooh. Sidon spat out, while Abendis spat out a mouthful of blood. What the hell? Why did Duque suddenly jump out of a rock and appear at the most critical point while we were fighting for our lives here? Sidon and Abendis looked at each other. Abendis was still a little suspicious. Isn't Marcus dead? Duque's voice came from the wind again. F***CK, if you don't get down here, I'll kill you first. There wasn't a commanding tone, nor was there the usual polite atmosphere in the command center. There was only a ruffian aura that Abendis had never heard before. Sidon shrugged. I'll bet a copper that it's him. I'm not betting with you. General Abendis bared his teeth and waved his hand, summoning the dozen or so Alliance elites nearby. With a loud shout, he killed his way through a small path. Duque stepped on the red blood and stood in front of a huge iron gate. Beside him were naturally the four-man team and a ground full of beastman corpses. Even with beastman's height, they would feel small and powerless in front of such a huge iron gate that was more than 40 meters tall. The Red Dragon Queen is in here? Sasha asked softly. Duque nodded. Yes, but this is where the test begins. Actually, there had been a test just now, but Duque had scared the little female dragon so much that she pissed her pants, so he passed. Glancing at the notification in his vision, Duque said, Marion, come in with me. The three of you. Try your best to defend this place while we go in to deal with the Guardians. If there are too many chiefs, retreat to the Iron Gate. Duque pointed at the Iron Gate beside the Iron Gate. A paladin, a ranger, and a half-baked wizard. This strange combination of defending this huge tunnel didn't seem reliable at all. No one objected because this was Duque's decision, and it was a reasonable one. The Guardians of Demon's Soul weren't just anyone. They were worthy of being the two strongest fighters, Duque and Marion. And they had to defend this place to the death. Gavin Rad checked his equipment again. He first carried the shield on his back and hung the one-handed hammer on his waist. Then, he took out a huge two-handed hammer from his inventory and tied the handle of the hammer to the handle. Sasha jumped onto a protruding rock beside the Iron Gate. Because the rock was high on the outside and low on the inside, Sasha treated it as an archery tower. She took out 3 quivers of arrows and fixed them on the wall. Ronan gritted his teeth and started absorbing the magic crystals he got from Duque like crazy. Just then, a commotion came from the cave entrance. The battered Sidon Dathrahan and General Abendis had finally arrived with 6 or 7 knights. However, the ones chasing after them were the chieftains of the strongest first-line clans, led by Chieftain Orgrim of the Horde. Seeing that Sidon and Abendis had managed to get here, Duque smiled. He shouted at the paladin who was being chased like a dog, "Help me defend for 20 minutes. With that, he didn't care about Sidon's reaction and brought Marion through the Iron Gate. Oh no, it's Duke Marcus again. As if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his heart, Orgrim's heart sank into the abyss the moment he caught sight of Duke in his field of vision. Duque. It was Duque again. Every time the tribe was about to win, Duque would always come out and mess things up. Again and again. Again and again. He was kicked from the clouds of victory that was within his reach to hell. Orgrim couldn't take it anymore. Duque! A thunderous roar came from the sky, shaking the entire tunnel. Countless pieces of sand and stones fell from the top of the cave, making it seem as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. Chapter 5:11. Great Chief Orgrim's lungs were about to explode from anger. As a ferocious warrior, Orgrim had never believed in fate or anything like that. He had failed time and time again. Even Orgrim, who had an incomparably firm will, started to waver. Is Duque really my nemesis? When this question appeared in his mind, he could no longer suppress the uneasiness in his heart. Every night, he would dream of his own failure. He would remember the pain and anger that Duque had brought him. He could not suppress it. Orgrim pointed to the top of the cave and took up a stance with his right hand. In the next moment, Orgrim used his famous Hammer of Destruction as a super-large, hidden weapon. The sudden burst of magma-like heat increased the temperature of the entire tunnel. Everyone's field of vision was lit up. The scorching heat came from afar, and the surging wave of heat passed through the gap between Abendis and Sidan. The irresistible heat made the two scream in pain, and they quickly dodged to the left and right. Even so, their arms were still stained with magma-like viscous substance. The horrifying heat passed through the gauntlet and traveled to their arms, and they both felt a burning pain on their skin. Abendis could not help but pull out the short sword tied to his thigh and cut off the ropes on the gauntlet. Before the heat completely burned his arm to the gauntlet, he clenched his teeth and tore off the gauntlet, not caring that it was stuck to his hair and a small piece of skin. Ugh! Holy Knights always took advantage. Under the protection of the holy light, Sidan took off the gauntlet and threw it away without any injuries. At this moment, the one who felt the most numb was Gavinrad. Soldiers trained for 1,000 days were used in a single moment. Whether it was to save energy for Duque to deal with the protectors, or to maintain Duque's cool, Gavinrad had to take this blow for Duque. If it was the old Gavinrad, he would not be able to take it with just the holy light. However, after Duque released the shackles of fate, the strengthened version of Gavinrad could still put up a fight. Gavinrad swung his giant iron two-handed hammer like he was playing golf. It drew a huge arc on the ground and accurately met Orgrim's hammer of destruction. The lightning energy awakened from the storm altar crashed into Orgrim's flame energy. The collision of the two violent elemental energies instantly lit up the entire underground passageway, as if it was daytime. The corpses on the ground suddenly jumped up, as if they had come back to life due to the vibrations of the power. Soon after, they were either burnt to a crisp by the uncontrollable flames and lightning power, or directly carbonized by the lightning power. The violent elemental energy spread in all directions, and the huge tiles on the floor of the passageway stacked up layer by layer like broken waves. It was a ghastly sight. It was like experiencing a small, terrifying earthquake. Gavinrad was in a sorry state, but he managed to hold on. It was impossible for Orgrim's flying hammers to be replenished every second. Gavinrad's quality was not good enough, but he was good enough. At that moment, Gavinrad did not know how many times he had cheered for himself. The result of the collision of the two hammers was that Gavinrad sent Hammer of Destruction, flying like a high-flying ball. Duque's face was momentarily stunned. Then, Duque revealed a smile that Orgrim wanted to slap him to death 10,000 times. At this time, Duque actually had the time to wave his hand and make a bye-bye gesture to Orgrim. Orgrim was on the verge of losing his mind. As he charged, he picked up a large hammer that was obviously used by a centurion and charged forward. Behind him, Kilrog and the other chieftains charged forward as well. At this critical moment, a new group of Alliance army arrived. They were Uther and Tyrion Fordring. After knowing that Duque was still there, Tyrinas finally made the decision to raise the stakes. He sent the last reserve team over as well. This decision directly caused most of the top forces of the Alliance and the Horde to start a decisive battle in this rather narrow passage for an army. After entering the Iron Gate, it was pitch black. The Red Dragon Queen is imprisoned here? Marion, who was holding her staff, was confused. Her vision was not as good as Sasha's, but her night vision talent still allowed her to see further and clearer than Duque's. What entered her vision was a vast expanse of emptiness. Just be careful. Almost as soon as Duque finished speaking, the air in front of them suddenly flashed, and thousands of small fireballs exploded out of thin air. These fireballs spun quickly and merged with each other. Finally, they formed a blurry human figure, and the silhouette quickly became clear. This was a huge flaming puppet, the guardian of Demon's soul. It was a magical life form that was unknown to outsiders. Get out of my way! Marion roared angrily, and her staff shone brightly. Without the silk wrapping around it, Marion's staff revealed its beautiful appearance. The staff was dark red, and the tip was made of an unknown jade material. It was a pure, beautiful, naked flaming angel. As she roared, the dark red staff in her hand suddenly brightened, and a narrow beam of light flashed from the tip. In the next second, A demon soul guardian that was pouncing towards Duque and Marion was split in half by the blue arcane light. There was no blazing light like the sun, nor was there any sharp light. With just one simple move, the guardian of the demon soul, which was created by the 4 dragon kings, was killed. Duque looked at this scene in shock. He finally had a clear understanding of the power of this delicate and seemingly weak female counselor of the Silver Moon Parliament. Go. I can't hold it for long. Duque's right eyelid twitched. He suddenly realized that the damned flaming puppet had appeared again, roaring and pouncing towards them. This time, Marion used the same trick again, but it didn't get the desired effect. The flaming puppet took the hit head-on, and only paused for a moment before it continued to attack expressionlessly. Marion had to use another powerful spell that Duque didn't know about to destroy the flaming puppet again. Duque gritted his teeth. Marion, be careful. Hurry up, I can't last long. Marion smiled bitterly. Duque took out the Grand Marshal's battle staff and flashed deeper into the fortress. Chapter 5:12. At this moment, the atmosphere in the Dalajan Kingdom was extremely strange. The elites of the Rotterdam have been defeated? Don't be afraid. We still have His Excellency Duke Marcus. Yes, as long as he's here, we have nothing to fear. A large-scale elite assault battle that could have been recorded in history and surpassed the imagination of mortals had become the biggest joke. Just like how the silly orcs had fought with the humans on the vast sea, only to be killed. Today, the Rotterdam Kingdom had become the biggest joke. More than half of the kingdom's elite knights had been slaughtered in less than an hour. King Tyrrhenus could totally imagine that he would be criticized by the nobles of the Rotterdam Kingdom in the following days. If it was just a simple defeat, it would be fine. If they were to lose, they would lose together. At most, the whole of the Rotterdam Kingdom would suffer together, and everyone would go home to lick their wounds. But Duque had appeared. Duque, who was thought to have died somewhere, actually appeared again, and perfectly used the elites of the Rotterdam Kingdom as bait to lure away a large number of chiefs. What happened to being the leader? How did the great Rotterdam Kingdom become a sacrificial pawn? King Tyrrhenus felt a surge of anger in his chest, and he almost fainted on the spot. Tyrrhenus' face was very, very black, as if he had touched charcoal. His whole body was trembling. Others might think that he was sad about the loss of the elites, but only he knew that he had developed a grudge against a junior that he had always looked down on. Be it Anduin Lothar or Duke Marcus. These 2 candidates for the commander-in-chief of the alliance were the only way out, using the noble Lothar as a mascot, and then kicking Duque away when the war was not going well. That was what Tyrrhenus had thought. With these 2 scapegoats, it was only natural for the general of the Rotterdam Kingdom to be promoted to the commander-in-chief of the alliance. Who would have known that Anduin and Duque worked together perfectly? One controlled the western battlefield, and the other coordinated the entire alliance perfectly, organizing many successful military operations, and expanding the alliance from 8 to 10? Just thinking about it made him mad. In exchange for a compromise, 2 country bumpkins from a remote southern country became the heroes of the alliance. His Rotterdam Kingdom had contributed money, manpower, and effort in exchange for a core position. Look at the way the kings were looking at Tyrrhenus now. They were all mocking him, as if he was an idiot. Tyrrhenus almost wanted to send someone to kill Duque on the spot, but he resisted. Whether it could solve the problem of the Red Dragon Queen was still unknown. If he were to trip Duque up at this juncture, firstly, he would not be able to make it in time, and secondly, the alliance would really collapse. That would not be beneficial to the Rotterdam Kingdom at all. Even though he knew that he was on the verge of losing control, the self-restraint of a veteran politician suppressed his emotional impulses, allowing his intense heartbeat to gradually calm down. It seems that we old bones are still outdated. The future of the alliance still depends on Marcus and the other youngsters. He was no longer upset, no longer agitated. If he did not lose control just a moment ago, everyone would think that Tyrrhenus was a kind elder who took care of the younger generation. That's right. Tyrrhenus had decided that since he could not suppress Duque, he would kill him by praising him. According to his experience, he would definitely not be able to see through this kind of overt plot. Once he got carried away, it would be the time for him to fall into hell. Tarina's lips curled into a cold smile. Unfortunately, Tarina's would definitely fail. Duque was not some ignorant 16-year-old from a small village in Azeroth. Duque had no way of knowing what Tarina's was thinking. He did not take the loss of the Rotterdam Kingdom to heart. It was true that the Rotterdam Kingdom's unintentional attack helped him take the bullet. This was definitely unexpected. From the beginning to the end, Duque had never thought of tricking the Rotterdam Kingdom. This was a battle that transcended the mortal world. Why did the small Rotterdam Kingdom come here to interfere? Was it my fault that Tarina's was looking for trouble? No. I will not take the blame for this. Duque focused on finding Alexstrasza. From beginning to end, the Red Dragon Queen and the Black Dragon King, the two ancient dragon aspects, were the main focus of this show. Unfortunately, Duque did not know what was going to happen next. As a butterfly that incited the general trend and changed history, Duque had changed too many things. In the original history, because the main force of Orgrim had been destroyed, only the Dragonmaw clan was left to defend Grimbader. In the absence of Zulad, the orc warlock Nekros, who controlled the demon's soul, used the most idiotic method. He brought a large number of red dragon eggs with him and ran away from Grimbader. Now the main force of the orcs had not completely collapsed. The horde was still strong, not to mention they had the help of several ancient red dragons. It was unlikely that Nekros would run away, so this was likely to be a tough battle. As expected, Nekros came. Silently, an ugly orc's head seemed to be floating in the darkness. The dark blue light that flowed in the darkness reflected half of the old green face that was full of curves. The long facial hair looked like withered grass rooted in the cracked earth. The orc warlock's cheeks were deeply sunken, and the dull luster on his face reminded people of a corpse. Nekros pursed his lips tightly. His thick lips seemed to have two sharp stones on them, propping up two openings in his lower jaw, exposing his fangs. His hood was embroidered with demonic incantations, and the shadows that extended from it covered his eye sockets. The deeply sunken eyes emitted a deathly light in the darkness. If not for the fact that he could still feel his breath, Duque would have thought that he had encountered an undead, and not a living orc. Nekros spoke in a voice that reminded people of death. His common language was terrible, and Duque could barely understand him. Duke Marcus, the nightmare of the horde. I did not think that you would come. Duque leaned on his staff. To this world, your horde is the nightmare. Hee. Nekros let out a rough and unpleasant laugh. Unfortunately, after today, only one of the two nightmares will remain. Nekros was right. The Red Dragon Army was the last card of the horde. After losing the main forces of the Blackstone and Warsong clans, the horde no longer had the upper hand in terms of quantity and quality, and the terrifying military mobilization ability of the Alliance had only just been revealed. Duque curled his lips and imposed a conclusion on this meaningless argument. You die, I live. Chapter 513. Ha ha ha. Ignorant human. You don't understand the power and greatness of Demon's Soul. That's right, I don't understand. Duque admitted the first half of the sentence. However, he did not say the second half. What I don't understand is how much of the power of Demon's Soul you can use. The predecessor of Demon's Soul was the Dragon's Soul. This was the ultimate move used by the dragons to destroy the invading Burning Legion during the ancient war 10,000 years ago. In order to use this ultimate move, the four dragon aspects were tricked by Nethario, who was also a dragon aspect back then. They poured most of their power, and more than a third of their souls into it. As for the exact number, no one knew. It could only be deduced from a few words, but it should be a lot. If it were a human, it would be so much that they would not be able to walk steadily. In the worst-case scenario, there would be the Time King Nozdorma's power of time, the Magic King Maligo's power of magic, the Life Queen Alexstrasza's power of life, and the Dream King Isera's secret dream technique. There were four supreme powers, and even grasping a tiny bit of any one of them was enough to make any mortal's expression change, let alone all four of them at the same time. As long as Nekros was a little more powerful, Even Anastrian and Antonidas, the two breaking dawns, would have to kneel, let alone radiant moon mages. Under normal circumstances, if Duque encountered Necros, he would definitely be dead. But Duque was calm. His next words took a turn. "I'm in a hurry. Can you please die?" Duque was very honest. He told him his reason. He was in a hurry. Duque was very polite and said please. Duque was very annoyed, because the goal of his request was for Necros to die. Then die first. Necros suddenly waved a skull staff that still had faint traces of blood on it, and the space around them trembled. Duque's eyes suddenly narrowed. He looked at the evil staff that was obviously made from the skull of a human mage. Duque suddenly did not want to speak. Neither of them spoke again. But the aftermath of their magic power suddenly collided in the darkness, causing the surrounding ground to be filled with sand and gravel. With the two of them as the center, a storm surged in all directions. At this moment, time seemed to freeze. His surroundings were pitch black, and he was also in a huge semi-enclosed space. It was obviously impossible for outsiders to spy on this place, but the battle here seemed to be the focus of all the eyes in the world. In front of the huge iron gate, Orgrim was charging at the seemingly weak line of defense of Gavinrad and the others. Not good. Necros was going all out. Let's kill them all. That's right. Orgrim panicked. The Red Dragon Army was the tribe's last trump card. They could not afford to lose it. However, if it were any other lineup, it would be impossible for them to resist the attack of him and the tribal chiefs. This lineup was really not bad. After Gavinrad obtained the power of lightning, his short-term combat ability was already on par with the strongest Holy Knight Uther. If both sides were to duel, and the time limit was 10 minutes, it would definitely be a draw. Of course, if it was overtime, Uther, who had the purer power of Holy Light, and could wear down the opponent, would win. Orgrim picked up the Hammer of Destruction, which was connected to his mind, but he still could not defeat Gavinrad. Most of the other tribal chiefs encountered the same problem. Originally, Kilrog had the chance to heavily injure Abendis, but because of Sasha's arrows he failed several times. And the duel inside was at its peak right from the start. Necros wanted to kill Duque in an instant. He had to do this. Demon's Soul had never been a godly item that could be connected to its master's mind. Under the modification of the Wings of Death, it had long become the most powerful magic item. The price for such boundless power was vitality. Even though Necros was a beast man with strong vitality, even though he would kill disobedient red dragons and sacrifice them to Demon's Soul, for a terrifying magic item that could wipe out the entire Burning Legion expedition back then, this little bit of vitality was not even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Terrifying flames suddenly exploded, and the dark space became as bright as day. It felt like the darkest hell was suddenly surrounded by hundreds of suns. No, it was not just an encirclement. It was like a comet crashing into the ground at high speed. Even Duque himself did not think that he had any hope of surviving. Even Sasha, who was far away from the Iron Gate, could feel the monstrous heat coming from behind her. That was super high temperature that could even melt steel in an instant. Sasha's face suddenly turned as white as her beautiful silver hair. No, Duque. Everyone on the Alliance's side was so scared that their faces turned pale. Everyone on the Horde's side looked ecstatic. Necros is actually this strong. Orgrim laughed loudly, trying to use the common language to break Gavinrad's will. Duque is definitely going to die. Bullsh *T. Duque has never lost to you, Gavinrad retorted stubbornly, but it made Orgrim feel terrible. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be dead. But Duque, Orgrim's heart skipped a beat. Inside, in the huge empty space, facing the countless fireballs that were the size of small houses, Duque let out a soft sigh. He raised his hand and cast Arcane Impact. Could a simple mid-level spell break through so many fireballs? The answer was unless there was a miracle. But a miracle happened. The terrifying magic power that seemed to be able to destroy a kingdom's capital couldn't tear through that small ball of purplish-blue arcane energy. How is this possible? Necros shouted in shock. Almost instantly, The fireballs in front of him exploded like balloons that had been pierced by needles. It wasn't just the fireballs. Even the magic shield that he had sacrificed countless void devils in exchange for crumbled under Duke's arcane impact, like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Then, Necros watched helplessly as the magic he had shot out with the power of Demon's soul, at the critical moment suddenly distorted and dissipated under the impact of the seemingly ordinary magic power. Not only that, but even the condensed magic power in his body suddenly disappeared. Bam! Arcane Impact wasn't a terrifying fire-type spell. After being hit directly, Necros didn't immediately turn into charcoal, but he was still sent flying. Blood spurted out of his mouth in midair, before he finally fell limply onto the cold, rough ground with a thud. All the ribs in his chest must have been broken. No, how can? Necros' eyes widened. Chapter 5:14. Necros could no longer stand up. His eyes were still filled with endless horror and disbelief. He had never thought that as a high-grade warlock with the demon's soul in his hands, he would be killed in seconds one day. After spitting out his last 3 words, Necros died. No orc could survive such an injury, unless there was a high-grade shaman next to him. Necros used to be a shaman, but after using the demon's soul, he became a warlock through and through. He might have countless life-saving skills, but unfortunately, under Duke's surprise attack, he couldn't use any of them. Blood flowed out of Necros' limp body and melted in the darkness. At this time, he saw the system prompt from the wings of death. Attack the wielder of the demon's soul. My power will protect you. The corners of Duke's mouth curled up into a smug smile. Duke's voice sounded faintly. F***ck. Would there be a backdoor for a magic artifact that Nazario made himself? Back then, Nazario had tricked the 4 dragon aspects. As cunning as he was, he definitely wouldn't put himself in danger. Hence, the demon's soul could seriously affect the other 4 dragon aspects, but it definitely wouldn't affect the black dragon bloodline. Nazario had said that his power was protecting Duke, but to put it bluntly, the pendant contained his scales. Any power that came from the demon's soul would be rendered useless when it came into contact with the power in his scales. This feeling was like a college entrance examination in India. The examinees were taking the exam inside, and a large group of parents crawled outside the exam building to pass their children a cheat sheet. Well, the invigilator even treated the parents who were blocking the light outside the window as air. Thinking of this, even Duke, who had a vested interest in this, had a few words in his mind. Legal cheating. An official hack. Do you understand? Just like that, the orc warlock Necros, who was clearly stronger, was killed by Duke in a second. At this moment, Necros' death directly alarmed everyone outside the Iron Gate. Everyone could see that the complicated incantations that were originally climbing like vines outside the Iron Gate receded like the tide. Once upon a time, this place was an absolute forbidden area for the beastmen. Even if the great chieftain Orgrim wanted to come, he would need Necros to lead the way. Otherwise, even his powerful fire resistance wouldn't be able to save him. Now even a fool would know that something had happened to Necros. Otherwise, such a change wouldn't have occurred. Long live Duke! Even though there were only 7 or 8 people left, the alliance suddenly burst into thunderous cheers. Hiss! At this moment, all the beastmen in the surroundings couldn't help but gasp, and their rugged and ruthless faces revealed horrified expressions. How long had it been since Duke and the female elven mage entered? Such a short time was only enough for them to reach Necros. After all, it took Necros 3 months to build this place into an impenetrable fortress. Orgrim clearly remembered his assistant, Zulu Sid, telling him that even Gul'dan at his peak would have to kneel, let alone the weak mages of the Alliance. Necros was the demon god here. What kind of joke was this? What kind of trash demon god was this? He was actually killed in one move. Was Necros bluffing? No. Impossible. This wasn't the first time that Necros had personally killed disobedient young red dragons here. Then did this mean that Duke was too strong? What kind of terrifying efficiency was this? What kind of terrifying power was this? It wasn't just the beastmen who were enemies. All the human knights guarding the iron gate were also extremely shocked. Forcing Orgrim away with a powerful lightning hammer, Gavinrad raised his hammer high and laughed loudly. Do you see this? Damned greenskins. This is the power of the greatest hero in the history of the Alliance, Duke Marcus. Just as the morale of the horde began to drop, Orgrim laughed out loud as well. Foolish humans. You don't even know what's controlling the Red Dragon Queen? That thing is called the Demon's Soul. Only warlocks who can control the power of demons can use it. As a mage, Duque can't use it at all. Ha 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 ha. Without the order to remove the restraints, the Red Dragon Queen will never be freed. Of course, you can also try to kill that humanoid female lizard, and then taste the anger of the entire Red Dragon army. Thousands of elites had died, and more than 10,000 had died in the rear. So much manpower and resources had been wasted, and in the end it was all for nothing. This time, it was the Alliance's turn to be at a loss. Several people were instantly stunned, and some were even almost killed by the enemy. Suddenly, Sasha's voice sounded. Don't believe him. If he could solve it directly, Duque could have done it in 2 days. He delayed for so many days. And only yesterday did he personally tell me that all the cards are finally gathered. Finally gathered? If it were anyone else, no one would have believed such words. But the person who spoke was Duque, the most outstanding strategist in the entire Alliance. A wise man who liked to plan before taking action. If he dared to say such words, then it must be true. Orgrim looked at the battlefield in disbelief. He looked at the powerhouses of the Alliance who were at a great disadvantage, but had high morale. The chief's expression was indescribable. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and his fangs seemed to be chattering. His eyes were filled with disbelief, as if he was in a dream. How could one person's prestige reach such a level? Orgrim had longed for this for a long time, but had never been able to reach it. Yet his old enemy had reached it. It had to be said that it was ironic. Kill them. We still have a chance. Orgrim roared. Just then, a shining golden Gundam. Oh no, a paladin suddenly smashed through the ceiling and descended from the sky. When he landed, the hard tiles around him cracked inch by inch. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere and it was a mess. Go. Ask me first, whether. The Alliance's strongest paladin had arrived. On the other side, Duque quickly ran over and searched Necro's corpse. It didn't take him much effort to find a platinum-colored disc hanging from the Beastman Warlock's waist. System notification. You have found the God-tier magic device Demon's Soul. Almost as soon as Duque's finger touched Demon's Soul, the image around him suddenly became clear. It was as if an invisible hand had lifted the black cover covering the entire room, revealing the situation inside the huge cave. This was a huge cave that could fit at least 2 Boeing 777 airliners. Duque didn't expect the Red Dragon Queen Alexstrasza to be less than 30 feet away from him. Chapter 515. This wasn't the first time Duque and the Red Dragon Queen had met. They had met once before after the Battle of Karazhan. At that time, Duque was completely focused on the death of Medivh, and didn't have the time to carefully examine this legendary Dragon Queen, who had existed throughout almost all of Azeroth's history. Even though Duque had seen Alexstrasza in the game, his impression of the Queen's human form was still very vague. Duque suddenly found that he couldn't take it anymore. The person in front of him was so sexy that it was against the rules. In his field of view, Alexstrasza was chained to the ground by a small iron chain. Her feet were facing Duque, and her body was facing inward. From this angle, the first thing he saw was a pair of long legs that were different from the slender and long legs of the elves. They were full of strength and beauty. They were the same long legs that gave people the feeling that they wouldn't break no matter how much they played with them. Further in, because of the angle of view and the fact that the queen was only wearing a pantsuit, the view was dominated by her perky buttocks. The smooth and large curve formed a perfect arc. It was snow-white and full, and at first glance, one could feel that it was full of firm elasticity. The queen's right hand was on the ground, and her left hand was behind her waist. She was half-bent, inadvertently forming a standard S shape. From this angle, as the line of sight moved, One could immediately see the eye-catching and proud peaks on the buttocks. The towering peaks were like climbing a towering mountain, and then immediately had to look up at an even higher peak. The firm and proud peaks, matched with the red and gold-rimmed breastplate, looked even more sexy and charming, like a red lotus in full bloom. Looking at it again, it was an angry oval face full of a strong exotic style. It was clearly a standard female elf face template, but the noble aura that was still revealed even under torture and defilement made it even more indescribably sexy. However, in her proud figure, there were a few criminal accessories. On her jade-like feet, there was a shiny black iron shackle around her ankles, and there was an evil metal collar around her slender neck. A long iron chain hung down from her neck, passing between her breasts and reaching the ground. This was basically hinting to Duque that if he really wanted to do something to the queen, Alexstrasza would definitely be unable to resist. Is this the so-called queen's temptation? How could I, Duque, be such a shameless person? What locked room play? What bondage training play? I won't do something so shameless. I am the righteous and reliable Lang Jun, the Duque with the highest moral integrity in the world. Ha ha ha. Facing the queen who was looking back at him, Duque revealed a lecherous smile. If there were no mistakes, the moral integrity inherited from Medivh would be added to his body in 21 seconds. Hypocrisy would activate. His smile would also instantly rise from the level of a pervert to the level of a saint. Yes, the plan worked. However, a gust of cold wind blew over, and with a whoosh nothing happened. Something seemed to be wrong. The lecher was still the same lecher. Something didn't seem right. Duque quickly asked the system elf in his mind. Hey, where did my integrity go? Hurry. Waiting online. Integrity? Host, do you have such a thing? The system elf replied seriously. If its voice wasn't so rigid, perhaps it wouldn't have such a fatal effect. But it was precisely this sort of tone that seemed to be speaking nonsense in a serious manner that caused Duke's chest to feel as if it was split open by something. Moral integrity was like a ball. Throw it out, pick it back up. Throw it out, pick it back up. Throw it out. Wait, do I have such a thing as integrity? Damn it. This joke isn't funny at all. Duque angrily flipped the table in his mind. I'm talking about human nature. The human nature that Medivh gave me. The system elf immediately came to a realization. It's long gone. You've been cursed for 15 days. And you're losing your humanity integrity every day. In addition, you've just used the soul-corroding power of the wings of death. The humanity integrity that you inherited from Medivh has been completely lost. Right now, your soul power is 100, and your humanity happens to be 100%. Puffed. In the mind world, Duque vomited 300 liters of blood. Alright, life is like a drama. If you don't have integrity, acting skills will save you. Watch how I, the best actor Duque, reverse the situation. Duque's face almost changed as he put away the frivolous smile on his lips. When he focused his attention on the pair of inhuman red horns on Alexstrasza's head, he kept saying to himself, She's not human. She's not human. Her horns are so cute. What am I thinking? However, just as Duque was about to say something, the Red Dragon Queen spoke first. Her voice revealed a clear sense of grievance, and it sounded like she was scolding. Duque, why are you only here now? The slightly magnetic voice had the typical style of a queen, but it also sounded like a lover coquettishly saying, Damn you, why are you only here now? Duque swallowed his saliva, and then instinctively felt that something was wrong. Suddenly, the voice of Deathwing sounded in Duque's ears. What are you hesitating for? Recite the spell I taught you, and liberate Her Majesty the Red Dragon Queen. At the same time, a sentence emerged in Duque's mind. It was not Nesario's voice but Duque's own voice. What are you thinking about? Recite the spell, so that Alexstrasza will become your slave forever. You can have the most beautiful queen in the world and control eternal life. You can also command the entire Red Dragon army, sweep the world, and be crowned king. The Red Dragon Queen in front of him had a coquettish expression on her face. She was more charming than all the female protagonists in all the romance movies, that Duque had watched on his computer before he transmigrated. Alexstrasza did not know what happened to Duque at first. She was overjoyed when she saw that Necros, who should have died 1,000,000 times, was killed by Duque in one move. "Oh Titan, you're the one who saved me. Thank you. Duque, hurry up and untie me. I don't want to stay in this damn place for one more second." Duque was unexpectedly silent, revealing a perverted look. But the queen did not care. "Quick, quick, quick. My compatriots and I are absolutely happy to roast every living orc in the world with our dragon breath. Do you want any more rewards? Don't worry. I've saved so many treasures from ancient times until today that you can't even imagine them. Alright, since you saved me, I can share some with you," Alexstrasza said with a pained expression. Something unexpected happened again. Like a pervert, Duque pounced on her directly. Then, just as his hands were about to touch the queen's pair of giant cats, he suddenly pulled out Demon's soul with his right hand and took out a strange accessory with his left hand, wanting to smash it on Demon's soul. At the same moment, a cold male figure suddenly appeared behind Duque. Chapter 516. Cunning brat, do you think you can fool me? Accompanied by the casual and contemptuous words, this ghost-like black-haired man waved his hand lightly, and Duque died. It was not that Duque did not try to resist. Unfortunately, the light of his resistance was so dim, as laughable as a firefly trying to compete with the sun. Ice barrier was activated at the very end. He was just an inch away from turning Duque into ashes with the black flames he had casually waved out. However, the powerful defense constructed by the ice element still protected Duque for more than a second. Just like in the future, the invincibility of a paladin and the ice barrier of a mage could be dispelled. In the face of a higher and more condensed power, the so-called absolute defense was just a joke. How could a mere morning star mage like Duque be able to resist the power of the Deathwing, Nesario, who was at the peak of power in the world of Azeroth? Duque was dead. He was killed in an instant without any suspense. Right in front of Alexstrasza. The poor red dragon queen had just thought that she could regain her freedom. She did not expect to see the dawn of hope, only to find that it was just a prelude to a darker nightmare. Alexstrasza was furious. She was really angry, with incomparable grief and indignation, and with the grievances she had suffered for months. She roared angrily at Nesario. However, it was of no use. Necro's death only meant that the demon's soul had temporarily lost its master. This did not mean that the shackles on her had been lifted. She could only look up at the high and mighty Nesario pitifully and desperately like a weak woman, who could be ravaged 10,000 times at any time. Nesario, no, he should now be called Deathwing, appeared in human form. His entire face was still shrouded in a gloomy black fog. The only thing that could be seen was his pair of eyes that were full of contempt. Well, I really didn't expect that you, who are known as the most beautiful in the dragon realm, would actually fall to such a state. You've really opened my eyes, Alexstrasza. Nesario. The queen gritted her teeth. Don't call me that name. With a light shout, a strong wind was stirred up in the huge cave. The queen's long, fiery red hair was blown straight by the strong wind. After the rage, Deathwing's voice became gentle again. He stretched out his left hand with sharp nails, grabbed the queen's chin, and twisted her up. Spit. The queen directly spat a mouthful of fragrant foam towards Deathwing. However, that mouthful of saliva suddenly stopped in midair, and in the next instant, it vanished without a trace. Originally, I wanted to send this filthy thing back to your face, but that would be a blasphemy to all dragons. So thank me, dear Alexstrasza. The black dragon king's sharp claws rubbed against the queen's delicate face, easily scraping out bloody scars. The queen's face was disfigured, but she instantly healed the scars. As the life-giver, as long as her power was not completely exhausted, her regenerative abilities were almost limitless. But the red dragon queen was trembling violently. Are you touched? I'm not interested in you. As long as I get what I want, it doesn't matter if you become a lowly orc slave, or a despicable human plaything. Shaking Alexstrasza off, Nesario walked towards the back. There were a few huge dragon eggs that were blooming with a crimson glow. However, the power of the flames wrapped around the dragon eggs had almost been extinguished. The light was like a candle that was about to go out, and could no longer protect these dragon eggs. Bang! Nesario waved his hand, and suddenly, the last protection on the dragon eggs shattered. At this moment, she understood everything. Why did the demon's soul, which had been missing for nearly 10,000 years, suddenly appear? Why did this terrifying magic artifact that specialized in restraining dragons suddenly fall into the hands of the orcs? Why did the orcs find her so perfectly and inexplicably capture her? Why did the orcs so cleverly use all kinds of mental and physical torture to reduce her resistance and make more red dragons obey the tribe's orders? Then, why did Duque come to rescue her? There was an answer to all of these questions. Only the dragon aspect understood the dragon aspect the best. From the beginning to the end, it was all Nesario's plot. And his ultimate goal was her dragon eggs. Nesario probably wanted to use her dragon eggs to hatch the most evil and incredible new type of evil dragon that obeyed his orders. Alexstrasza shouted in despair. No, don't touch them. Nesario did not stop. He sneered as he continued his movements. The queen was in despair. She was choking. Tears of sadness welled up in her eyes. Who will save me? Save my child that might be born. I'm willing to give up everything for this. It was as if the heavens had heard her prayers in the darkest of despair. A miracle had really happened. Right in front of Nesario, an emerald green light suddenly bloomed. Was that a portal? The next moment, Deathwing's movements suddenly became sluggish, as if his entire body had been forcibly pulled into slow motion. Following that, a blue radiance shot out from the green portal and sent Deathwing flying. Boom! The surging magic power directly blasted him to the top of the cave. It turned his entire body into a cannonball, piercing through the underground rock stratum of the entire grim battle fortress and blasting into the sky. 3 unfamiliar yet familiar figures appeared beside Alexstrasza. Although her eyes were covered by tears, she could not recognize these people for a moment. This did not hinder her from sensing who they were by their aura. Isra? Nozdorm? Maligos? Isra smiled and nodded, then sighed. Sorry, we can't touch that thing either. It's more important to deal with Nesario now. That's right. The dragon aspect had shot themselves in the foot. Back then, there were not many intelligent life forms on planet Azeroth other than the dragon race. Therefore, after they realized that they could not destroy the demon's soul, they set up a spell that no dragon or dragon descendant could use. Now, they could only watch helplessly as the thing was placed in front of them. But the 3 dragon aspects could not do anything about it. They could not even save their companions. This was definitely ironic. After saying that, the 3 human-like fellows nodded at the same time and disappeared in an instant. In the next second, the terrifying roars of 4 dragon aspects rang out in the sky. A 3v1 dragon aspect battle had begun. Chapter 517. The pitiful red dragon queen could only wait for the next person who was qualified to use demon's soul to judge her fate. Silence. Dead silence. The queen's chest rose and fell with rapid breathing. As expected, did I still have too much hope? Alright, I shouldn't have asked too much of Duque. Who's next? No matter who it is, as long as they can truly free me, I swear I'll treat them well. Abandon the high and mighty dignity of the dragon race. Treat them well. Alexstrasza's mind was in a mess. Her fate was in someone else's hands. It didn't feel good to be hovering between hope and despair, heaven and hell. But she had to wait. She didn't expect to see Marion Firewing, a high-ranking elven magician. Marion walked in as cleanly and elegantly as if she was taking a stroll in her own garden. I am the Red Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. Quick. Release me, save me. Like a drowning person who couldn't swim, the queen instinctively asked for help when she saw the emblem of the Alliance and the Silver Moon Council on Marion's chest. For thousands of years, the Red Dragon Army had a good relationship with the Silver Moon Council. At this moment Marion smiled. It was a proud smile, with an unbridled feeling that was infinitely close to madness. The female elf, who was smiling like a flower, gave the queen a terrible ominous feeling. Save you? Who said I'm going to save you? Marion asked with an extremely cold smile, pushing the queen's heart into a bottomless abyss again. She had already fallen into the 18th level of hell. Who would have thought that there was another one at the bottom? 36 levels of hell? Are you afraid? The red dragon queen's voluptuous body trembled. In the eyes of men, this might be an original sin of temptation. Unfortunately, in the eyes of the same sex, this was a sin. In Marion's eyes, there was clear jealousy. Dragons are so good. Eternal life in the true sense, eternal beauty, eternal youth. Back then, the eternal life of my night elf compatriots was also bestowed by you, wasn't it? Your Majesty, the giver of life. She seemed to be murmuring to herself, but it made the queen's heart colder. Who are you? Who are you loyal to? Whoosh, it really is Demon Soul. Marion walked to the place where Duque had died, and picked up the platinum disc. Remember your new master's name. Mother Dragon. My name is Marion Firewing. Ha ha ha. Alexstrasza's beautiful face was flushed with anger, but before she had time to feel sad, she began to feel the soul torture from the demon's soul. Ah! The pain of having his heart pierced by countless needles was something he was unable to adapt to. You're a warlock. You're one of Nesario's men. Not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry could use the demon's soul. Only warlocks could operate this terrifying demonic artifact. In less than a second, Marion could clearly feel her life force fading away. With a wave of her hand, a mirror made of ice appeared beside her. Marion could clearly see the wrinkles that appeared on her face. Anger flashed across her face, and she immediately laughed. That orc warlock is really an idiot. He actually put his own life force into it. If he knew that you created the world tree. Ha 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 ha. The queen's expression was terrible. The high elves were not outsiders like the orcs. They were not so easy to fool. However, as a queen, she instinctively refused to be dominated by Marion. Alexstrasza gritted her teeth. You actually want to be my master? Haha. Do you think Nesario will let you go? Nesario. Ha ha ha. Although he disguised himself well, the long years had made him forget one thing. The dragon's soul itself was designed with the 5 dragon aspects as the standard. Marion softly chanted an incantation, and the platinum-colored disc immediately changed. The disc was divided into 5 equal regions, 4 of which were radiating with a bright radiance. The queen immediately realized what Marion wanted to do. Wahahaha. Yes. As long as I put the scale that contains Nesario's soul and power into the demon's soul, even the famous Deathwing will become my slave. When that happens, the 5 colored dragons will crawl at my feet. I will no longer be a mere Silvermoon counselor. I will be the queen of the entire world of Azeroth. Ha 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 ha. Marion laughed wildly. Her laughter was so crazy and unrestrained that it drained the blood from Alexstrasza's face. Everything was clear. Whether it was her capture, or the Red Dragon Legion being controlled, most of it was a conspiracy of Deathwing. However, as Deathwing's backup, as the one who was truly trusted by Deathwing, and as the agent to control the other 4 colored dragons, Marion had chosen to betray Deathwing for some reason. In any case, the artifact Dragon's Soul, which the dragon aspects had created to repel the Burning Legion, had really shot themselves in the foot this time. The queen was not optimistic about Marion controlling Nesario through the demon's soul, because it depended on how much of Nesario's soul she got. If it was less than 10%, the evil Black Dragon King would probably kill Marion, even if it meant the soul backlash. Once 1/3 of the soul was injected like the 4 dragon aspects, control would be inevitable, and it would involve the entire race. At this moment, Marion was suddenly attacked without a sound. Break! 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 4 emerald green arrows suddenly appeared in the air less than a palm away from Marion. Unfortunately, that was the end. The arrowheads were stuck in the air by some mysterious force, unable to move an inch. It was only then that an oval magic shield wrapped around Marion appeared in everyone's field of vision. Oh! Marion slowly turned around and looked at the female ranger behind her with a bow. It's you? Windsor Windrunner. It was Windsor. Realizing that something was wrong, she left the front line to Gavin Rad and the others, and followed them like crazy. Let me ask you, where is Ducoin? The usually beautiful and quiet Windsor now had unconcealable anger and excitement. Even her arms, which should not have trembled, were obviously shaking. Marion smiled wickedly. He's dead. The person who killed him was Deathwing. After saying that, she pointed at the Grand Marshal's combat staff on the ground that was blackened by the flames. When Windsor came in, it was not that she did not see the blackened head of the staff, but when she suddenly heard the news and saw Alex Strass's depressed expression, Windsor suddenly felt dizzy. No. Chapter 518. The Grand Marshal's staff wasn't an ornament from a noble's house. It represented the Dalajan's highest magical achievement. Sasha clearly remembered that even if she shot an arrow, the staff's magic power would deflect it. But now, it lay quietly on the ground. There was a deathly still scorch on the ground, with the point of impact as the center. It wasn't an ordinary fire, but a terrifying flame that could burn everything. Even the rock stratum itself was destroyed. The magic surrounding the burn marks was so dense that it couldn't be fooled. Sasha felt like she was about to collapse. She suddenly recalled all the time she'd spent with Duque, the miraculous things he'd done after appearing as her future brother-in-law, turning trash into treasure, modifying the storm altar, repelling an army with a single banner, saving Lordaeron's city from a desperate crisis, and saving the Red Dragon Queen despite being cursed with death. Of course, what touched Sasha the most was that he'd saved her from the terrifying dragon breath. Nothing was more touching than a man who could be relied on at the most crucial moment. Just as she thought she could understand this future brother-in-law, he'd been captured by the wings of death. They'd finally reunited, and they hadn't even exchanged a few words. Who knew it would be an eternal farewell? I want you to be roasted in the flames of hell for 10,000 years. With a furious roar, Sasha disappeared from where she stood. In the next second, in the huge pitch-black cave, sharp arrows were suddenly shot at them from all directions. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. There was a continuous stream of steel arrows. There was a silent elven wooden arrow. There was also the nimble power of wind. However, everything was resolved by the pair of gigantic flaming wings behind Marion. The wings were over 2 meters long. It was as if they had a life of their own. With a light flick, at least 3 arrows would be reduced to ashes. Ha ha ha. Too weak. You're really too weak. With your strength, you can't even make me move half a step. And you want to kill me? Ha ha ha. With her left hand on her waist, and the platinum disc in her hand, Marion placed her right elbow on the back of her left hand, and propped up her chin. Marion gazed at the darkness with a devilish gaze, as though Sasha was right in front of her. Gritting her teeth, Sasha activated Aimed Shot. Aimed Shot was the ranger's most powerful skill. Corresponding to its power, it was an ultimate skill that needed to be charged up. In a battle like this, exposing one's position was definitely disadvantageous for a ranger. The explosive power of a high-ranked mage was far greater than that of a ranger. What Sasha was betting on was Marion's arrogance. Even though she did not want to say it out loud, she had to admit that the difference in strength between the two of them was too great. If Aurelia was here, she might be able to suppress Marion. However, Sasha, whose damage had not been polarized, could not think of any other skills other than aimed shooting that could blast through the protection of that pair of strange flame wings. Sasha knew that Marion was trying to destroy her ultimate move and deal her a heavy blow, but when she thought of Duque, who had turned into ashes, her tears flowed uncontrollably. Duque, bless me to kill him. Hee. She still did not move. Marion looked down at the arrow that had gathered all of Sasha's power as it shot towards her, as if she was looking at an ant. And then there was no then. The raging flames easily burned the entire arrow. Let's end this. Marion raised her left hand lightly, her index finger forming an elegant arc with her arm. Even this light finger of hers was bewitching. A huge fireball instantly formed at her fingertip. In the next second, the huge fireball would shoot out and blast Sasha into ashes. Just at this moment, Marian suddenly felt the sound of wind behind her head. Who? Alexstrasza. Turning around, she saw the dumbfounded queen. It was obvious that the queen was looking in the direction of behind me? Instinctively, Marian activated the power of Demon's Soul. Unfortunately, she had made the same mistake as a certain stupid orc warlock. The surging evil flames were easily popped like soap bubbles. A brick made of ice appeared out of thin air. It was grabbed by a swinging arm and slammed down like lightning. Marian's own magic shield took effect. The moment it took effect, an arcane energy that wasn't very strong, but was sharp as a needle, easily pierced through her shield. In the end, fresh blood dripped down from her forehead, quickly staining Marian's bewitching face. No matter how strong Pharaoh is, he'll be knocked down in one move. Marian fainted with a brick, while humming something that others couldn't understand. Who is that guy? Naturally it was our Duque. That signature evil smirk, that face that deserved a beating after succeeding in his scheme. Sasha would be able to recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Duque. Duque. The first voice was the queen's, and the second was naturally Sasha's. Yes, Duque replied to Sasha with a smile as he dealt with Marian. It's not auspicious to kill a sister. Therefore, Duque fitted Marian with the spellbreaker shackles that he got from Kuel Salis. This thing was mainly used to destroy the circulation of magic power in the magic circuits of the human body. For a regular person, this thing was no different from regular shackles. For a mage, it was enough to turn a high-level mage into a weak girl who couldn't even truss a chicken. As a gentleman, he would be letting himself down if he didn't use tortoise shackles. But with two important ladies present, Duque just cuffed Marian's joints behind her back. Duque. Sasha even dropped her bow and walked over in disbelief. Yes, what's wrong? Duque. Sasha's tone became even more intense. Duque blinked. Didn't your sister tell you that I know true mirror image? Duque continued to spout nonsense. Mirror image my ass. He really couldn't take it anymore, and was instantly killed by the wings of death. Looking at the system notification that he had 90% soul power and 90% moral integrity, Duque was crying in his heart. But to prevent Sasha from worrying, he could only continue to pretend to be strong. Duque, is it really you? Looking at Sasha, whose eyes were blurry and glistened with tears, Duque knew that things weren't so simple. Duque sighed. It's really me. If you don't believe me, come and touch me. Duque, from shock to surprise, and then to ecstasy, when all the grievances and fear in her heart poured out, Sasha finally did something that not only Duque didn't expect, but she also didn't expect. Sasha pounced on Duque and pushed him to the ground. Then she closed her eyes and kissed him deeply. Chapter 519. There was something in this world called taboo. As an old fool on Mount Aquina, it was Duque's dream to have the legendary sisters. But on the other hand, as a young man of the new era, Duque had told himself countless times to just wash up and sleep. At first, Duque didn't have any special feelings for Sasha. At most, he felt that the three Windrunner sisters were very pretty. Life was always full of surprises. Saving someone had accidentally opened up Sasha's heart. There were some things that happened naturally, like water flowing into a canal. Being kissed by a beauty that he liked was a blissful thing. Now that he had lost his moral integrity, he couldn't count on Duque to become a saint. Duque's eyes widened. He was stunned for less than half a second before he shamefully obeyed. The boss of the Jiangnan tannery ran away with his sister-in-law. Then cough. One of Duke's stiff arms gently went through the silver hair and held onto the back of Sasha's head, while the other wrapped around her waist that had been through a lot of training. In that instant, Duke clearly felt Sasha's body stiffen for a moment. Then, not only from her face, but also from her breasts, waist, and thighs that were pressed close to him, he could clearly feel the heat rising. But the kiss didn't stop. A smooth, fragrant tongue came over and tangled with a certain someone's tongue. Their heavy breaths intersected, accompanied by soft murmurs. Things seemed to be progressing in a wonderful direction at a high speed. Unfortunately, before their passion was fully ignited, it was interrupted. It was the roar of an ancient dragon guardian. Damn it! You two are purposely making me angry, aren't you? Definitely on purpose, right? Duque, are you going to let me out or not? I'll count to 3. If you don't let me out, I'll go crazy. The passionate kiss stopped, and their lips parted. Looking at the silver line connecting their lips, Sasha suddenly blushed. The next second, she bounced up as if she had been electrocuted. She sat on Duque's lap, not knowing what to do. Duque was annoyed. 1, 2, 3. Alright, I'm done counting. Why don't you go crazy? In the face of Duque's fierce gaze, Alexstrasza actually cowered. Alright, just say it. Are you here to save me or not? Or are you going to learn from those 2 shameless fellows and enslave me, making me do all kinds of strange things? Something strange. Duque blinked. You mean what you did with this silver-haired elf? The queen covered her chest with her hands, which was a rare sight. Puffed. Duque choked. Damn you. I'm not interested in you, okay? If you care so much, why are you wearing a bikini armor? You might as well wrap yourself up into a seed. Why do you need to transform into a human form? There were so many things to complain about. Duque was so angry that he didn't want to scold her anymore. Sasha was so embarrassed that she wanted to die. In his excitement, he had forgotten about the presence of the Red Dragon Queen. Now that he thought about it, he just wanted to find a place to hide and not see what was happening outside. Duke's forehead was full of black lines, and he held his forehead. Alright, if it's to save you, I will save you. Let me ask you something. Have you developed any thoughts of revenge against society, or going against humanity, because of the long period of torture? The queen raised the shackles on her hands. If you don't unchain me, I'll really get angry. Then what do I get out of saving you? You do. If you delay any longer and something happens to my siblings, there won't be any. Sasha gaped as she watched Duque haggle with the famous ancient dragon like a peddler. She couldn't connect Duque to that great hero of the alliance at all. Actually, it wasn't Duque's fault. Because of the curse, the integrity he had inherited from Medivh was gone. Now Duque had become that unprincipled animal-like transmigrator again. Alright, one last request. I'll say it through the mental connection. Duque gently pointed his finger between the queen's brows. Then, the two of them quickly exchanged their conditions and opinions. This wasn't a problem at first. However, Duque underestimated Alexstrasza, who was one of the top figures in this world. Even though it was a superficial exchange of consciousness, the queen still secretly peeked at a part of Duque's memory. Duque didn't know. The mental barrier he had created with the system was still trying to resist Nesario's mental corruption. Alright, it's time to end this. Duque picked up Demon's Soul. At this moment, Sasha picked up her bow again. She stared at the unconscious Marion and spread her senses. On the other side, the queen was also watching Duque nervously. She had had enough of the torture. Her little heart had long been broken and mended, and she really couldn't take any more fright. Because of the chains, she had to kneel on the ground like a pilgrim worshipping. She looked up at Duque and stared at Duque's every move. Cautiously, Duque took out the accessory that Nesario had given him. A wave of arcane energy gathered in his hand. With a crisp bang, the glass used as a disguise shattered and dissipated, revealing the real thing inside. It was a scale in the shape of a water droplet, with a fiery and evil aura. There seemed to be a small black dragon roaring angrily on the scale, as if blaming Duque for not acting according to his evil script. Looking at the platinum-colored disc, Duque used the black scale to draw a huge arc on the surface of the demonic creature. The scales of the wings of death were like a knife cutting through butter, easily cutting through the hard golden surface of the demon's soul. 1 area, 2 areas, 3 areas, 4 areas. When the 4 glowing areas were all cut open, Xian's eyes lit up. Windsor let out a scream. Be careful. She pulled Duque away in time, only to see that Demon's Soul was already floating in the air, and the long arc-shaped incision began to violently spew out a strong light with 4 colors: green, representing the emerald dream; red, representing the life giver; bronze, representing the controller of time; and blue, representing the supreme power of magic. Duque could clearly feel the huge amount of energy surging out of the cracked magic artifact. He knew that he had to act quickly, or the energy would dissipate forever and be lost in the wind of Grim Battle Fortress. Ladukasai. He chanted the incantation from the Red Dragon Queen. He used almost all the computing power of the system to constantly adjust the spell. He was fully focused. He didn't want anyone to make a mistake at such a critical moment. This was not only the incantation to liberate the Red Dragon Queen, but it was also one of the most important factors in the entire course of history. The four colors began to blend together, forming a strange rainbow. It flashed and rose at high speed, passing through the rock formation and flying into the sky. Chapter 520. The bloody battle in front of the huge iron gate had reached its most brutal state. Roars, curses, and the sounds of heavy weapons clashing were the strongest sounds on the battlefield. Due to the aftermath of the intense battle, many of the torches' bases had been destroyed. The light in the tunnel gradually dimmed, and the torches that had fallen to the ground emitted the last bit of heat before they were extinguished. How long had this bloody battle lasted? How many of these savage green-skinned monsters were there? Where did they come from? What kind of strength did they have? Would Duque, who had entered the Iron Gate, succeed? If they succeeded, how many of the people guarding here would be able to survive? Everything had already become a blur, as the people guarding the Iron Gate were already mentally numb. They instinctively waved the weapons in their hands, inhaling more of the bloody air with every breath they took. With every exhale, they let out the loudest roars they could muster. The chaotic wind in the tunnel blew at Uther's ear-length hair, and his brown hair swept across his cheeks. Unlike the other warriors whose eyes were bloodshot from the fierce battle, his most devout faith made him far more tranquil than the others. Uther's mouth was shouting the most majestic of slogans, but his ears were pricked up. It was as if he was standing and listening to a human epic being recited by a bard. The origins were long and magnificent. It was like a long wind that crossed the barriers of time and space, bringing the ideals of their distant ancestors and their wills to this place. In a daze, Uther saw countless illusory knights appear beside him, fighting side by side with them. Even though their faces were blurry, he could clearly see that they were humans. He suddenly understood who they were. Ancestors, kings, and all the heroic spirits who had fought for humanity. The Morning Star wizard behind Uther, Ronan, was unexpectedly powerful. With the support of an almost limitless amount of magic crystals, his violent arcane magic poured out in torrents in the entire tunnel. Any orc below the level of a chief would be instantly killed if they were hit by his magic. It was a pity that there were just too many orcs. For some reason, Uther thought of 2,800 years ago, when humans had just obtained magic power. A man raised his sword in front of the knights and said, "I swear on this sword that humans will bear the grace of the high elves and establish an eternal covenant. We will wipe out all evil creatures and give civilization and hope to the truly intelligent races. My people, my children, my grandchildren, will pass on my oath until the end of the world." More than 2,800 years ago, the flag of the Arather Empire was raised on the battlefield of the Earthy Highlands, reflecting the dawn of that day. Humans and high elves joined forces to fight against the green trolls. 2,800 years later, it was as if 3,000 years of history had overlapped. Humans and elves joined hands once again, but this time, their enemies had changed from the green-skinned trolls to the green-skinned orcs. 2,800 years ago, we had Thoradin the Great. Now where is our new Thoradin the Great? While Wuther was talking to himself, the battle had reached its climax. The number of humans still standing in front of the Iron Gate could be counted on two hands. The nameless knights had all died in battle, but in front of them, there was still a sea of orc elites. Suddenly, a strange feeling that shook the entire stronghold surged towards everyone, covering the sky and covering the earth. Roar! From the deepest part of Grim Battle Fortress, a loud and clear roar came from within. It was the roar of a dragon. It was the roar of the life-giver, the Red Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. The roar was filled with complicated emotions. There were almost all kinds of emotions. Sadness, displeasure, resentment, hatred, but most of all joy. Joy for freedom. Joy for breaking free from the cage. And anger towards the enemy. An ominous feeling spread through every orc, as if the sky was about to fall on them. Not good. Could it be? Before Orgrim could finish, the huge iron gate suddenly opened. From the dark and deep hole, a magical light suddenly flashed like daylight. Sorry, this is the could it be that you are afraid of. Alexstrasza has been liberated by me. Orcs, your doomsday is here. This was followed by a voice that was familiar and extremely hateful to the horde. Countless magical lights shot out from the inside, passing over the heads of the human knights and holy knights. It was like a waterfall of the Milky Way falling from the heavens, exploding into the orc army. Boom, boom, boom. After a series of explosions, other than the chieftains, there were no longer any orcs alive in the Dark Army. Even someone like Orgrim, who had amazing magic resistance, could not avoid being sent flying by the violent magic. The power of this magic. Duque? Every knight turned around in surprise. He did not disappoint anyone. Duque's not-so-muscular figure appeared in the middle of the gate. Behind him was a somewhat bashful Sasha. Nodding to everyone, Duque raised his head and shouted, "It's time. Muradin." This was a voice that contained magic. It penetrated the walls and spread far away. Before the orcs could react from the explosion, they suddenly realized that there were many holes on both sides of the huge tunnel. Countless dwarves waved giant axes and wore hammers as they came out of the holes that were only half the height of the orcs. They did not care about the consequences and started fighting. Muradin Bronzebeard was the first to attack. He raised his warhammer high. Brothers of Bronzebeard, for victory. For the future. For tomorrow. For our descendants, we will no longer live under the shadow of these greenskins. Kill. Kill. The holy knights, who were already exhausted, released their strongest notes since the start of the battle. The already dazzling holy light shone even brighter. They were like small suns that crushed towards the horde. No, impossible. It shouldn't be like this. Orgrim's fangs were as sharp as ever. The hammer of destruction that he wielded was still powerful. He could send more than 10 dwarven warriors flying, or even kill them with a single sweep. However, all they could see were orcs struggling in despair. Every orc was worthy of the word valiant. But so what? They lost. This time, he was truly defeated. Rexer could not save the horde. He, Orgrim, could not do it either. Even the Red Dragon army, which they relied on the most when they were reorganizing, would immediately rebel the moment their queen was freed. One could imagine the countless red dragons roaring and twisting their necks to bite the dragon-howling orcs that had been riding on their backs for so long to death. No! Duque! Only you! Duque, you must pay the price! Orgrim used all his strength to leap high into the air and throw his hammer of destruction at Duque. Chapter 521. Oh no! Dodge! Don't dodge! At this moment, two completely different factions appeared among the Holy Knights. Those who were close to Duque all prioritized Duque's safety. No one thought that a mage should fight a warrior head-on. However, Uther shouted that he couldn't dodge. Why? Because in that moment, Duque's figure overlapped with Thoradin the Great in Uther's eyes. Fighting head-on was a man's romance, and also a symbol of courage. If Duque considered himself a mage, then he definitely had a reason to dodge. A single flash would solve all his problems. If Duque wanted to become a true leader, then Duque definitely couldn't dodge Orgrim's attack. If he dodged, then he would lose the reason for everyone to follow him. What would Duque do? The answer was out. Duque pulled Sasha behind him with his left hand to prevent her from being affected by the flames. He then slowly pushed out with his right hand. Even if they weren't mages, the knights who didn't know anything about mystical domains could clearly feel the mana in the air surging. Finally, the blue arcane energy solidified. A terrifying aura surged out from Duke's hand, enough to pierce through the entire underground and spread out in all directions. The bright blue light collided with the hammer of destruction, that Orgrim had thrown out. Uther regretted it the moment they collided. What a loss. No. Duque is going to lose. Right. Duque had only thrown out a ball of arcane energy, but Orgrim had thrown out a real semi-divine weapon. Both of them had great power, and usually, the one without a physical body would be at a disadvantage. However, Duque's use of power was ingenious, and it completely changed Uther's understanding of power. From the start, Duque didn't just use one power. Countless arcane bullets formed a continuous path of light. It looked like a river in the sky, or like a water droplet piercing through a stone that had been accelerated by 1,000,000 or even 10,000,000 times. In terms of pure strength, Duque's attack was not as powerful as Orgrim's. Orgrim's strike was strong enough, but it didn't have any aftershocks. Duque's attack was like the growth of all living things. It had a long source and was unable to shake his opponent in terms of quality, but it wasn't too far off either. Then he made up for it with quantity. Also, it wasn't just the quantity. The arcane missiles that Duque shot out seemed to have some kind of interval or rhythm. The continuous impact destroyed the power and momentum of the hammer of destruction. Of course, everything happened in an instant. If one didn't have amazing perception, they wouldn't be able to tell that Duque had lost first and then won. Everyone could only see that even Great Chief Orgrim's desperate attack could not shake Duke's terrifying aura. That was as if a god of magic had descended from the heavens. The moment the two forces collided, the hammer of destruction couldn't shake Duque's magic power at all. The destructive red flames were forcefully shattered, and the blue arcane energy became the only dominant force on this path, and on this bloody battlefield. The dim sky was like a remnant of light and shadow, and it was filled with dense blue cracks from the explosion of the arcane energy. For half a second, the entire hammer of destruction seemed to have stopped time, and it was frozen in midair before flying back. Awesome! Not only the surviving holy knights, but even the dwarven warriors who had just killed their way out all cheered. This wasn't the end. Duque suddenly placed his left palm on his right arm. The mana output was further increased. In front of everyone's astonished gazes, Duque actually poured out all the mana he could mobilize in his body at once. Boom! The arcane light arrow that had been shot out turned into a huge arcane light pillar. A beam of arcane light blasted over like a comet crashing down, shooting right into the long and wide passageway. In an instant, it set off an extremely terrifying tsunami. The violent arcane energy set off layers of huge waves, and with a shocking momentum, it surged towards the orcs. This arcane energy wasn't fast, but it could clearly be seen that this energy was spreading throughout the entire path, at the speed of an arrow. Everything that came into contact with this energy, such as the walls and the ceiling of the cave, all shattered into pieces. This energy was like a black hole that devoured everything, destroying everything it touched. The first to touch this energy was an orc chiliarch, and his huge and burly body was directly swallowed up. After letting out an extremely painful scream, his entire upper body completely exploded, leaving only two hairy legs that fell to the ground. At first, Muradin wanted to scold Duque for not being kind enough to even attack his dwarven ally. But after seeing it clearly, Muradin laughed. The killing range of this arcane light pillar was surprisingly based on the height of 170 meters above the ground. Unless the dwarves were courting death and activated Avatar, at this time, no dwarf in the world would be that tall. Faced with this extremely surging power coming at them at high speed, every orc only had two choices. One was to be like a heroic orc and fight head-on. The other was to lower their noble heads and avoid it. The choice that Orgrim wanted Duque to make was copied and pasted by Duque and sent back to him. Orgrim hesitated. It was another choice between life and death. He could indeed tell himself, I am the great chief. I should save my life, lower my head a little, and reorganize the orcs. As an invader, we will be successful even if we keep the rule of a continent. But if he did this, would he still be considered a brave orc? Would those heroic tribal warriors still treat him as the pride of their tribe? No. Orcs could accept defeat. Orcs could die in battle, but orcs would never allow cowardice. hammer of destruction, had long been sent flying to who knew where. Just like that, Orgrim strode forward, and with a straight punch, he blasted out what might be the last attack of his life. At this moment, time seemed to freeze. Two burly figures suddenly appeared in front of Orgrim, blocking his path. In less than a tenth of a second, the first figure was suddenly hit by the arcane energy. Orgrim could clearly see that the orc's body instantly crumbled into pieces. And the second figure, which was much larger than the orc, was blasted away by Duke's power, crashing into the cave wall beside Orgrim and deeply embedded into it. At this moment, the weakened arcane energy finally landed on Orgrim. Chapter 522. No beastman knew how Duke had become so strong all of a sudden. As Duke's status rose, no one in the tribe could fight with Duke head-on and come back alive. And Orgrim's understanding of Duke was still at Stormwind City, when he attacked Stormwind's stronghold and fought with him directly. At that time, Duke gave Orgrim the feeling that if he had more time, he could still kill him. It was definitely not like now, where he felt an irresistible sense of powerlessness. Even after being weakened twice, Orgrim was still unable to withstand the full power of Duke's arcane spell. Countless times of superposition, the vibrating force instantly exploded on Orgrim's fist and spread throughout his body, making him feel as if he was going to be crushed into powder in the next moment. Although the battle-hardened Orgrim instinctively knew that he would not die from this attack, and would at most be seriously injured, the feeling of not being able to take down a bean-sprout-like opponent like Duke made Orgrim feel like a hero at the end of his road. In that instant, he recognized that the one who stood in front for him was the Black Scar tribe's chief Kashtrak. The second was the mixed-blood beastman hero, Lexa, whom the entire tribe had once despised and looked down on. As a mixed-blood beastman and ogre, he had a larger and sturdier body than beastmen. At the very last moment, the two heroes used their bodies to protect their great chieftain. So I'm so weak that I need someone else to protect me, Orgrim muttered to himself. This feeling was so desolate. Then, the excruciating pain that made the chief hover between life and death spread through him, and his vision went black. Chief! All the beastmen and chiefs exclaimed in shock. What was a leader? A leader was the backbone of a group, the soul and backbone of a group. No matter if it was because Orgrim had fought with Uther for so long, and was only half injured, or because Duke had the upper hand in terms of technique, or because Duke had unleashed the Red Dragon Queen's aura to unleash such a shocking attack. In the eyes of both the Alliance and the Horde, it was Duke who killed Orgrim in one hit. Regardless of whether it was true or not, he would roar at it first. Orgrim is dead. The Alliance will win. Kill. Compared to the tribes whose morale first fell to the bottom, and then fell into the abyss, the Alliance's side was like an aphrodisiac first, and then on steroids. This was especially so for those unscientific paladins. In their peak condition, their radiance was even brighter than before. These guys actually broke through on the battlefield. He had broken through his own shackles. He had broken through the limits of his spirit and body. In terms of numbers and quality, the Horde still had the absolute advantage. However, in all directions in the sky and on the ground, the Horde was being slaughtered by the Alliance like they were vegetables. And at this crucial moment, Orgrim lost consciousness. A snake could not do without its head. Because the chief was unconscious, Zuluhid, who happened to be the vice commander, rode his dragon into the sky. The vice chief of the Blackrock tribe, Sabek, was at the front lines. The weakness of the lack of a unified command was magnified. Kargath Bladefist, who was more bloodthirsty and cruel, ordered them to fight it out with the Alliance. Kilrog Deadeye, who was more rational and resourceful, ordered a retreat. The two completely different orders created the greatest amount of chaos among the beastmen. If Orgrim and the others could break through the defensive line in front of the Iron Gate, then everything would be different. If Orgrim had not impulsively thrown out the hammer of destruction, perhaps the battle would still be in a stalemate. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Long live Duke Marcus! They shouted. In every passageway, every pass, every gate, There were the silhouettes of the Alliance's warriors chasing after the horde. Duque did not participate in this pursuit. Even though a Morning Star mage could continuously recover his mana, he was really exhausted. Ever since he had been ambushed by Gul'dan and activated the curse, he had not been able to sleep well for a single day. The shadow of death had always been lingering around his soul. It was only when Alexstrasza, who had recovered her strength, instantly removed the curse and stopped the rapid loss of his life force, that he could finally take a breather. It was not easy for him to make a huge comeback and take the greatest credit. The small credit should be given to the people below him. He could not just eat the meat while his brothers below him did not even get to drink the soup. After confirming the Alliance's victory, Duque's legs suddenly turned to jelly. Beside him, Sasha hurriedly supported Duque. Duque? Are you alright? I'm fine. I'm just a little exhausted after a full-powered attack. Completely subconsciously, Sasha let Duque's entire body lean against her, without a care in the world. The approaching masculine aura caused Sasha to be a little confused, but her heart was filled with pride. The world in front of her seemed to be a little blurry. The scenes described in the legends and reality intertwined. At this moment, it was as if she had returned to 2,800 years ago, when the humans and the High Elves worked together to expel the trolls in a dreamlike war. That was a war between the two races against the fate of death. Back then they had won everything. 2,800 years later, the new generation of elves and human heroes had once again returned to this battlefield, fighting for the sacred oath that had once again shone with glory. And today, the one leading all of this was the man leaning against her. A man who seemed weak, but created miracles time and time again. A man who had protected her and saved her life. Sasha raised the longbow in her hands and shouted with all her might, "Long live Duque!" Unlike the relationship between Aurelia and Duque, Sasha did not have the entanglement of fate that the two of them had. If one had to use an adjective to describe her relationship with Duque, perhaps it could be summed up as fanatical worship. A natural fanatical feeling that had come from going through the trials of life and death. Facing Sasha, who suddenly turned around with a burning gaze and looked like she wanted to swallow him up, Duque was a little stunned. He then smiled bitterly. "I just feel like I've let Aurelia down." Sasha insisted. "Humph. What's wrong with that? The High Elves don't mind polygamy, nor do they mind polygamy. I don't believe that Big Sister won't be willing to share you with me." If I said if, there's no if. If there's really an if, I'll snatch you from Big Sister, even if I have to shed all pretense of cordiality. We're all women, so why can't we snatch a good man? It's not in my character to silently back out, and then wish the other party happiness. With that, Sasha directly gave Duque mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Chapter 523. Duque lost his moral integrity. As an old driver from Mount Akina, he didn't have much moral integrity to begin with. If not for Mediva's humanity, perhaps Duque's moral integrity would have been even worse. Of course, moral integrity was something that could be picked up after it was dropped. Gavinrad returned after a short chase. When he and Ronan heard that Marion was actually Nesario's spy, their mouths were wide open. Marion is a spy? Ronan was the first to not believe it. He was rather innocent, and didn't even dare to look at Marion's breasts, let alone find any traces of her. "When did you find out?" Gavinrad touched the back of his head. Windsor wanted to know the answer to this question too. "I noticed something was wrong from the very beginning." Duque suddenly sneered. Most of the people in the circle of high elven mages are arrogant and prideful. The Silvermoon Parliament used the reason that Kuel Salis made too many concessions to the humans during the Alliance back then, and tarnished Anastrian's reputation for 2,800 years. How could they suddenly show heartfelt respect for the newly established Rotterdam Alliance? Windsor was silent. It wasn't that Duque was wrong, but that Duque was right. The reason why the High Elves had the ancient name Quell Dorii was because of their unwillingness to be exiled, as well as their pride and self-satisfaction. Logically speaking, everyone knew that without the Alliance, Kuel Salis would be destroyed at any moment. Knowing it was one thing, but accepting it emotionally was another. To be honest, Windsor knew very well that until now, not many of the High Elves regarded themselves as part of the alliance. Even though most of the people sent to participate in the war against the tribes this time were rangers, who were considered to be of low status in the country, and the mages led by Marion were the only exception. Why would a powerful Radiant Moon mage, a Silvermoon Parliament member, deign to come and lick Duque's boots? Others couldn't figure it out. Only Duque himself knew that Marion might be one of Nesario's people. In the history of Azeroth that Duque was familiar with, there was no mention of Marion Firewing. Throughout history, there were not many members of the Silvermoon Parliament. To Duque, the members of the Silvermoon Council were a group of passers-by who were considered powerful at this point in time. The problem was that a powerful Radiant Moon wizard had suddenly appeared in this group of passers-by and directly participated in the process of saving the Red Dragon Queen. Duque immediately raised his guard against Marion. If there were any variables that would affect the course of history, the biggest variable would naturally be Duque himself, followed by Marion. As a high and mighty Silvermoon counselor, it could be said that he had been cheated by his teammates in the Alliance's war. However, a senator who had been loitering in various salons for thousands of years, making a living out of art and music, and who prided herself on being extraordinary and noble, risked her life to follow a cursed and dying Alliance deputy commander to play an adventure of infiltrating the enemy's rear. If Duke still couldn't figure out which side she was on, then Duke must be out of his mind. Therefore, after Duque was killed by Deathwing, Duque refused to resurrect immediately. He was waiting for Marion to jump out herself. Sure enough, she came. In his calculations, Duque didn't expect Sasha to rush in. Fortunately, Marion, like Necros, was overly reliant on the power of Demon's soul, which was why she was knocked out with a brick. During the subsequent body search, Duque also accidentally found something. Another piece of Nesario's scale. It also had the effect of brainwashing. After pondering for a while, Duque decided to promise Alexstrasza to hand over this bad elf, who tried to control her, and humiliate her again to the Red Dragon army. Hee, I promise I won't kill her, Her Majesty the Queen said. Marion, you're on your own. Duque couldn't imagine how the Red Dragon Queen, who had suffered so much, would vent her anger on Marion. Now, Duque had two scales with Deathwing's soul in his hands. Looking at the remaining 1/5 of the platinum disc that had lost its demonic aura, Duque smiled evilly. Duque, why do I feel like you're a little naughty? Sasha muttered. No, I'm suddenly thinking about how Gul'dan will die after activating my death curse. He'll die. This time, everyone was shocked. One had to know that Gul'dan was a horde powerhouse who had fought 100 rounds with Antonidas to a draw. If not for his betrayal, the outcome of the Lordaeron battle might have been rewritten. Now Duque suddenly said that Gul'dan would die? Normal people can't do anything to Gul'dan. To be honest, even if two Breaking Dawn wizards of the Alliance worked together, they might not be able to kill him. Duque smiled mysteriously. Then how can Gul'dan die? Ronan asked. Ha ha ha. Duque couldn't stop laughing. Of course, mortals can't kill a demigod warlock like Gul'dan. But Gul'dan's mistake is that he shouldn't have courted death and opened Sargera's tomb himself. What? Sargera's tomb? When did the boss of the Burning Legion have a tomb? Gul'dan was currently on an island in the Broken Islands of the Endless Sea. The once beautiful temple was now just a ruined mound. However, the ruined appearance did not matter to him. He could feel a powerful pulse coming from the bottom of the temple. The powerful force tugged at him like an electric current, and he could feel that the whole building was shaking under its influence. Hurry up and go in, he shouted to his warlocks. We have to go in. In reality, he was considering whether to bring his subordinates in. He knew that Sargera's tomb was inside, and there was the Eye of Sargeras inside. It had godlike power, but should he go alone or share this power with the rest of the Shadow Council? In the end, he made up his mind. Since he didn't know what else was in this ancient temple, he felt that it was best to bring them along. If necessary, he could kill them when he found Sargeras' eye. Entering the bottom of the temple, Gul'dan found an extremely powerful seal. It was a seal from Egwene, the previous world guardian. Egwene's seal targeted almost every intelligent creature in the world of Azeroth, except for the beastmen from Draenor. Gujar easily broke the seal made by the previous guardian Egwene. He pulled hard, and the door of the tomb opened. In the next second, endless demons drowned Gul'dan and his subordinates. Chapter 524. Orgrim had a very dark dream. Not to mention torches. Even the light created by the shaman's natural magic could not penetrate it. The darkness was so cold that his fingers quickly froze. Even his breath quickly turned into ice crystals and fell to the ground. However, in front of him, the darkness slowly and silently wriggled and condensed into the shape of a human. When the dark humanoid opened its eyes, the whole world became even darker. Looking at the pair of eyes that seemed calm and wise, but were actually fierce and lifelike, Orgrim cried out in shock. "You are Duke?" Duke smiled evilly. "Orgrim, you and your tribe will pay for the bloody massacre you caused when you invaded the world of Azeroth. I declare that you will be imprisoned for eternity." "No, we are not wrong. The ones who are wrong are the demons. They poisoned us. They tricked us into drinking that terrible blood." Ignoring Orgrim's protest, the entire world became even darker. Countless dark arms reached out from all directions, firmly suppressing Orgrim's resistance. While laughing eerily, they approached Orgrim and finally grabbed him, throwing him into an eternal prison made of divine power. "Ha ha ha. As long as I, Duke, exist, the tribe can forget about becoming the overlord of this world. Ha 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 ha." Duke's evil laughter echoed endlessly in Orgrim's mind. "Aha!" Orgrim suddenly sat up and screamed, scaring the orcs around him. When he opened his eyes, Orgrim realized that he had just had a nightmare. "Great Chief, you're awake?" His face was clearly in a sorry state, and even two of his fangs were broken. But Zulud had a bright smile on his face. "Zulud, you. I was made a fool of by a dragon cub that couldn't be raised properly. Don't worry, I'll slaughter him and make a stew for myself." At this time, Orgrim realized that all the orcs around him looked like a defeated army. He was carried on a simple stretcher. He heard a loud crashing sound. If he was not wrong, he should be near a giant rock dam. Even though he had a bad feeling, Orgrim still asked, "How's the battle going?" Without hiding anything, Zulud replied, "Terrible." The moment that damned dragon queen regained her freedom, the Dragonroar tribe's cavalry became snacks for the giant dragons. Then, the giant dragons immediately gathered together and attacked the orcs gathered outside grim battle. Of the hundreds of thousands of orcs, not even half of the tribe survived. Everyone was knocked unconscious. Hearing this, Orgrim felt a sharp pain in his heart. It's all over. It's all over. If it wasn't for the Red Dragon Legion, they would not have been able to. But now, even if the Red Dragon army really didn't like to get involved in mortal wars like the rumors said, the destruction of these troops in the wetlands was enough to cause the greatest adverse impact on the overall situation. Looking at the sky in the distance, there were a few giant dragons flying at high speed. It was obvious that they were in an intense battle. Once upon a time, when he received the report that the Black Dragon King might participate in the battle to liberate the Red Dragon Queen, Orgrim and Zuluhit cursed Deathwing for being a busybody. Although he didn't know what role Deathwing played in this incident, Orgrim suddenly hoped that Alexstrasza and her Crimson Dragon Legion would be the victor of this cruel aerial battle. At the same time, on top of Grim Battle Peak, Gavin Rad and the others were dumbfounded. After the battle with the Horde, not only did you, as the Alliance's Deputy Commander-in-Chief, not manage the overall situation, you actually had the nerve to come and watch the show. It was one thing to watch the show, but what was the meaning of taking out so many things? Even if you were a bystander, you should at least have a sense of propriety, right? Looking at what Duque took out from his inventory, everyone was dumbfounded. It was a round dining table with a white tablecloth. 4 gorgeous golden wine glasses were placed on the white tablecloth, and the glasses were filled with freshly opened bottles of red wine. The plates, which were as clean as new, were filled with all kinds of snacks. It was a pity that fresh fruits could not be stored in the inventory. Otherwise, this would have been a perfect picnic. "Brother, what are you playing at?" Duque warmly greeted everyone. He pulled out a stool and sat down. "Everyone, don't stand on ceremony. Sit, sit, sit. I've activated the phantom mist. Nesario can't see us." "Duque, this doesn't seem like a good idea. What's wrong with it?" "I'm already giving him face by not making cola popcorn." None of the natives of Azeroth knew what cola popcorn was. Seeing that Duque was acting cool, everyone sat down suspiciously. It was Sasha, who was the most curious, who adapted the fastest. She took a sip of the wine and ate the biscuits. "Duque, we're here to watch the show." "Of course we're here to watch the show. The civil war between the 5 dragon aspects of Azeroth is a once-in-a-lifetime event. If you don't watch it, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Furthermore, Nesario actually wants to brainwash me into becoming his slave. I don't have the ability to participate in such a great battle. I'm happy to watch him get beaten up like a dog. Come, 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 everyone place your bets. How many minutes can Nesario last from now on? Those who win will get double the compensation. Nesario is the king of the black dragons after all. 10 minutes. I'll bet a copper." After hanging out with Duque for so long, Gavin Rad had a tendency to fall in the direction of the shame of the paladins. Ronan thought for a moment. "A magic jade. 15 minutes. Duque rolled his eyes. "Damn it. I was the one who gave you your magic jade. Sasha was the most generous. I'll bet my entire fief that Deathwing won't last 5 minutes." Duque almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "Hey. That's enough." Sasha was unmoved. "First of all, my legendary fief is still in the hands of the orcs. Second, if I really lose all my fief, then I'll live in Karazhan." Duque's facial muscles kept twitching. He really didn't know that Sasha had such a petulant side to her. If she won, the fief would be doubled, but if she lost, she would blame it on him. It seemed like this lady was going to win no matter what. At this moment in the sky, the battle between the 5 dragons had entered a white-hot stage. In the beginning, Deathwing was suppressing the 3 giant dragons and beating them fiercely. How fierce was he? Just like Lubu. However, when Duque destroyed Demon's Soul, Chapter 525. Time went back to more than 10 minutes ago. Deathwing was blasted to the ground by Malygos, the king of magic. Naturally, he was furious. While flying backward at high speed, Deathwing's body grew rapidly, from a small black humanoid to a terrifying existence that was nearly 100 meters long and had a wingspan of tens of meters. Almost at the same time he appeared, the red dragons soaring in the sky also noticed him. Awoo! Without the slightest hesitation, all the red dragons in the sky ignored the orders of the orcs on their backs and attacked Deathwing crazily. Originally, the red dragons did not want to listen to orders from the bottom of their hearts. Coupled with the hatred they had with the black dragons, it had lasted for 10,000 years since ancient times. This hatred, so thick that it could not be dispelled, caused the red dragons to completely lose their minds. "Idiots!" Looking at these little red dragons, Nesario sneered. At least a dozen red shadows streaked across the sky and flashed towards Deathwing. However, in front of the Black Dragon King who had revealed his true form, these young red dragons were really not enough. That's right. It was different from the 2 red dragons that had ambushed him previously. This was Nesario's perfect form. In contrast to the further enlargement of his body, there was a more terrifying speed, reaction, strength, and vitality. Deathwing dealt with these red dragons so easily that it reminded people of swatting mosquitoes. A single flap of his dragon's wings could tear a red dragon that could not even be dealt with by an entire human army into pieces. A sweep of the dragon's tail could shatter the spine of a dragon that was more than 30 meters long, shattering its body into pieces. In less than half a minute, there were no red dragons that could fly in the entire sky except for him. Deathwing flapped his wings and grabbed a seriously injured dragon high up with his left claw, roaring to celebrate his victory. Blood was still oozing from the deep wound on the victim's chest and abdomen, and his claws also had burn marks. That was the price of touching the acid poison that flowed out of the fire patterns on the black dragon's body. None of the opponents the wings of death had encountered had been able to escape this. Are there any more idiots who want to die? Nesario shouted in dragon language. Along with the shout, Deathwing let out a deafening roar. He wanted to let all existences know that he was the supreme overlord, be it the sky or the earth. However, in response to him were several roars from the direction of the grim battle fortress. It turned out that there was more than one idiot who dared to come to die at this time. Deathwing soon discovered them. There were actually 3 idiots, and they were not just 3 ordinary idiots. The beautiful and elegant green, the gorgeous and dazzling blue, and the mysterious and strange earthy color. These 3 colors in his field of vision truly evoked Nesario's ancient memories. Only at this moment did Deathwing confirm that those fellows weren't simply sneakily attacking him through the Emerald Dream. They were truly participating in the battle. Izura, Nosdorm, and my good friend Malygos. Nesario's dragon had a very human-like expression of mockery on his face. Your reckless actions must come to an end, brother. Izura, the Queen of Dreams, said calmly. Brother? I have never been your brother, Izura. Open your eyes and face reality. Now there is nothing that can stop me from creating this new era that belongs to our dragon race. The Supreme Dragon King, Deathwing? Izura said sarcastically. The Black Dragon King nodded shamelessly. Not bad. This honorable title is indeed worthy of my strength. However, Izura, to prevent your scales from getting hurt, you'd better go back to your dream and sleep. And you, Nosdorm? Aren't you busy playing with mud every day? Ha ha ha. You bunch of idiots. Have you forgotten who is the real strongest here? To deal with the 3 of you, I can give you 2 claws. You're dead. As if reflecting his anger, Nosdorm twisted his body, and the huge dragon body made of sand shone with a golden brilliance. At the same time, his gem-like eyes also emitted a dazzling light. I've changed my mind, Nesario. I want you to become my collection in advance. Tisk. Deathwing spat out a corrosive breath disdainfully. What about you, Malygos? Don't you have anything to say to your old friend? Astacasta. A series of ancient dragon words sounded very elegant, but when translated, it actually meant one thing. F***ck your whole family of females. As a bonus for the answer, the Blue Dragon King opened his huge mouth. A stream of ice shot out from the crisscrossed fangs, crossed the void of 1,000 meters, and accurately brushed past Deathwing's body. No, it was not that Malygos was too accurate, but that Deathwing did not even bother to dodge. As soon as the ice particles came into contact with the terrifying black dragon's body, millions of small crab-like parasites immediately appeared. These insects desperately wanted to tear off the black scales and flesh. Umph! Deathwing snorted coldly, and acid sprayed out from the fiery red patterns on his body. As if covered in a mask, the dragon's entire body was wrapped in sticky black acid. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Countless miserable screams sounded, and almost all the magical creatures released by Malygos died in an instant, leaving only a few. The black dragon skillfully picked up one of the insects with his claws and swallowed it in one gulp. He smiled at the enemies in front of him, revealing a row of sharp teeth. Weak. Too weak. So weak that I'm ashamed to be associated with you. It's all because of your conspiracy back then, Izura said coldly. Ha ha ha. You can only blame yourselves for being too stupid to be deceived. Alright, since you're all as weak as insects, then you should end up like these insects. Nesario suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar and pounced on his opponent. The 3 dragon aspects used all their skills. Malygos' gorgeous magic that could destroy a human city was not dodged by Deathwing. If it were to pierce through a soap bubble, it would be easily broken. Nosdorma's time ability did affect Deathwing, but from the looks of it, the impact would not exceed 2%. It was completely harmless. Izura's mental power attack was more effective, which also caused her to have to bear the most attacks. The battle was one-sided. The three dragon aspects used various physical and magical means to attack the Wing of Death, but Neltharion resolved all of them effortlessly. No matter how hard they attacked, the cruel fact would not change, due to the fact that they had contributed a large part of their power to create the dragon soul. These dragon aspects were as weak as newborn babies compared to Deathwing. Chapter 526. The disparity in strength between the two sides was too great. This could not be considered a battle at all. If one had to add a definition to such a duel, it would be playing. In addition to the characteristics of the dragon aspects, the three dragons were actually not specialized in melee combat. Not even Nozdormu. He was more inclined towards techniques and special abilities. In the end, the three dragon aspects, who were equally famous 10,000 years ago, were chased around like rabbits being chased by Deathwing. Anyone who saw this scene would feel a sense of suffocation. Even Deathwing, who was part of the duel, could not stand it anymore. He could not help but mock. Poor and sad fellows, is this the limit of your strength? Your strength can't even tickle me. And this is the attack you made with the determination to die. Laughable, too laughable. There was no real anger, nor was there a desperate charge of death. The three dragon aspects seemed to be holding their breaths as they fought with Deathwing. This made Deathwing feel a little bad. Ha ha ha. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for me to be exhausted and reveal a flaw? Are you waiting for the so-called miracle to happen? Or are you waiting for Alexstrasza to break free and join the siege? Ha 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 ha. I'm dying of laughter. For me, what's the big deal if one more ant joins the battle? Ant. That's not necessarily the case. It was rare for Isra to open his eyes a slit. A psychedelic light flowed out from the dragon's eyelids, making him look very mysterious. I was prepared to persuade Nozdormu and Malygos to join me and fight to the death with you. But an interesting human gave us a better choice. Human? Wait, are you talking about Duque? Deathwing seemed to be a little panicked. Yes, only a human's dream could bypass his surveillance and directly contact Isra. That's right. At this time, the cunning Black Dragon King suddenly showed a mocking expression. Idiot. I've never trusted this slippery fellow. He doesn't know what my goal is at all. He can't control the demon soul. And he doesn't know the incantation to control Alexstrasza. Nesario put forth a great deal of arguments, and they sounded very much like the case. At this moment Malygos, the king of magic, spat. That kid doesn't need those things. The king of time, Nozdormu, sneered. For a character that doesn't exist in the timeline, he has the ability to ignore the maze of lies and directly walk from the beginning to the end. Nesario, you seem to have forgotten that you gave that kid a piece of your scale. The demon soul can't resist your power. Impossible? How did you know? Hee, we just know it. Nozdormu's words were like the curse of death, firmly grasping Nesario's heart. He suddenly realized that he could only count on the female elf who had fallen after being hypnotized and seduced by him. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. Almost as soon as Nozdormu sentenced him, a colorful light rose from the bottom of the stronghold. Roar! 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 Three dragon roars sounded almost at the same time. The three dragon aspects in front of him seemed to have become larger, as if they had been inflated. Suddenly their bodies expanded by 3 times, and they became existences about the same size as Nesario. This was not a simple, meaningless transformation spell. This was a change on the level of power. From quality to quantity, it was a change in strength. It was not one dragon, but 3 at the same time, and the same change had occurred. Impossible! The Black Dragon King was suddenly captivated by the chill. This level of power was both unfamiliar and familiar. 10,000 years. It had been a full 10,000 years. Ever since the ancient war 10,000 years ago, when he deceived the 4 dragon aspects and injected their souls and power into the dragon's soul. He had never regarded his 4 siblings as opponents. And now, he felt the changes in the 3 dragons in front of him. Even if Nesario didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that his originally perfect plan seemed to have made a fatal mistake. Duque. Hey, Isra. Nozdormu. Do you feel it? Do you feel it? Malygos repeated his question to his siblings nervously. I've regained my power. All the magical elements are crawling in front of me. Ah, how perfect. It's time. Nozdorma replied. His gem-like eyes flashed with an unusually bright light, and he asserted like a charlatan. That's right, fate has shifted. I see that your death has been greatly advanced, Nesario. Yes, it's time. Isra opened her charming eyes. At that moment, her eyes were so eye-catching that Deathwing could only try his best to avoid meeting her psychedelic gaze. The 10,000 years of nightmare is over, she murmured. Our dream of restoring the glory of the dragon race for 10,000 years is finally coming true. At that moment, a clear and melodious roar of a dragon rushed into the sky from the Grimbator fortress below. Within a few seconds, a huge red dragon shadow began to expand rapidly in the vision of the four dragons. The life-giver, the red dragon Queen Alexstrasza, had appeared. At that moment, if Nesario still maintained his human form, his face would be darker than the bottom of a pot. Unfortunately, he was already an ugly and ferocious black dragon. Naturally, he could not be darker. Sister, are you all right? Alexstrasza nodded her huge dragon head. Compared to the torture I've endured, I've gained more. What we lost 10,000 years ago has been returned to us. Demon soul. That damned demon soul no longer exists. The insignificant human that you despised, Duke Marcus, destroy him. Alexstrasza's declaration resonated with the other three dragon aspects. They all roared in joy. Impossible. Deathwing roared. Lies. All lies. How could someone as wise as me be fooled by a mere human? Impossible. You must be lying to me. The red dragon queen spread her sky-covering wings and revealed her sharp and huge claws. Despite the torture she had suffered when she was imprisoned, she did not look weak at all. No, Alexstrasza corrected him. The only lie that needs to be corrected is your so-called invincibility. Now, use your body to experience whether we have recovered our strength or not. That's right, Nozdorma said hatefully. I've always wanted to prove that it's a ridiculous theory. Chapter 527. Returning to the present. When Duque assumed the posture of an onlooker, he happened to run into the four dragons who had recovered their strength and were fighting each other. It would be perfect if there were kebabs or hot pot at this time. That was what Duque thought. Duque casually asked Gavin Rad. Say, do you think Nesario would feel F***ked when he suddenly found out that his old opponent had regained his strength? It was the first time the paladin had heard the word F***ked. The word was so vivid that it made him look like he was constipated. Ah, the mating of a dragon and a dog. Will a new species called a dragon dog be born? Ronan thought very seriously. Pfft, Sasha was already laughing. What dragon dog? It was clearly Duque teasing Nesario. Duque squinted his eyes and looked at the Dragon King, who had been beaten like a dog in the air. He felt great. The word F***ked wasn't enough to describe Nesario's current mood. Wings of Death was indeed suffering. His current situation was like a person teasing a few puppies. At first, he thought that the other party was just a few huskies, but then he realized that they weren't huskies. If it wasn't a dog but a wolf, then forget it. In the end, he realized that the other party had skipped the level of a wolf and went straight to the level of a three-headed hellhound. Wings of Death found that he was being attacked by four types of elemental powers that were almost unfamiliar to him. In the past, when he fought these opponents, it was like he was beating up their illusions. Every move had a gorgeous appearance, but it couldn't cause any substantial damage to him. Now it was completely different. He was facing the full force of the four dragons, and their strength was comparable to his. One hit would be very painful, two at the same time would be injured, three at the same time would be seriously injured, and four at the same time would really make him kneel. Nesario was shocked to find that he couldn't resist the combined attack of the four dragons at all. Low-level and low-density magical elements couldn't possibly impact the denser high-level magical elements. So the frost or fire elemental magic that Malygos had blasted at him couldn't shake him at all. The only thing that was more effective was the cloud that Malygos had brought that made him feel a little suffocated. This kind of auxiliary magic that wrapped around his throat and nostrils made him quite angry. What about now? The attacks from Malygos tended to be more direct. The Dragon Queen of Malygos had died at the hands of Neltharion back then, so the Blue Dragon King was furious to the extreme. The attack power of this crazy dragon was almost on par with his. Countless icicles with electricity shot towards Nesario from all directions, and the heat and cold descended on the Black Dragon King at the same time. Although the enchanted plate armor embedded in the Black Dragon's skin could eliminate most of the violent magic storm, it did not mean that the Deathwing could rest easy. That was because the enchanted plate armor was beginning to loosen. Once the plate armor fell off his body would collapse before the other dragons could attack him. Previously, Nozdormu could only speed up the passage of time on Deathwing's body, making him endure the torture of years and slightly drawing away his power. Now, Nozdormu unleashed the quicksand of time on him, continuously stealing the vitality of Deathwing. Deathwing felt weak all over, and the bones in his body stiffened. The most terrifying thing was that even his thinking had become slow. If it was before, Deathwing could stir up the chaotic power in his body and evaporate the quicksand completely before these effects caused permanent damage. But now, Deathwing panicked to find that if he allowed Nozdormu's time power to work endlessly, he would be running in the direction of idiocy, never to return. However, for Deathwing, among the four enemies, the most cunning and dangerous one was Isra. Previously Neltharion, who had already trained multiple dragon traits, under the whispers of the ancient god Enzos, could easily sweep away the dreams that Isra had created in his mind. At this time, under the attacks of Malygos and Nozdormu, his energy had been seriously scattered. Relatively, his resistance to the mental domain had also decreased a lot. Isra could easily invade his mind and lead him to the most terrifying nightmare. He seemed to have realized that the nightmares he had created previously were not effective, because this terrifying ancient dragon had seen countless horrors, bloodshed, and cruelty. It was not an easy task to disturb his mind. This time, Isra provided some more absurd nightmares to Deathwing, according to the script provided by Dew. Although he was in the middle of a fierce battle, Neltharion was daydreaming. I'm a dairy. My name is Leo. I'm a single dog dragon. My wife ran away, and I don't know where my children, Lien and CIA, have gone. As the Double 11 is coming, I have nowhere to go, so I can only go on Taba at home. I'm so lonely. I really want to get drunk and forget all my worries. Hey, I only bought 2 bottles of wine. Why did my pair of claws get chopped off? Is this the so-called chopping off your hands on Taba? Although he knew that it was a dream, this absurd and incomprehensible dream involved too much of Neltharion's mind. When he came back to his senses, he found that Alexstrasza had already attacked him with a fierce spell that even he did not expect. Neltharion screamed. Even his fine gold armor could not mitigate the terrible impact of this attack. Deathwing immediately released a powerful shield to resist, but he was already injured. His body endured pain that he had not experienced for decades. Just as he was about to fight back, the daydream came again. This time he turned into a black dog. My name is Black Gooden. My beloved Xiao Hua has eloped with the old Wang dog next door. I'm so sad. Master Enzos is so unscrupulous. He even fed me expired dog food. Woo woo woo. Neltharion had no time to react to what was going on. The pain came again. When he came back to his senses, he was shocked to find that a huge piece of plate armor on his chest had been torn off by the red dragon. The pain of the wound itself was bearable, but what frightened him the most was that he suddenly found that his body was showing signs of cracking again. At this time, Alexstrasza flew in front of him like a goddess of vengeance. She glared at Deathwing, but there was still a trace of pity in her eyes. You have to pay for your conspiracy and betrayal. You will experience all the pain that I have experienced, Black Dragon. Let's see if you can feel better than me. Chapter 528. The momentary panic quickly subsided. Nesario was indeed Nesario, the peerless dragon who had dared to trick more than half of the dragons back then. In addition to being sinister and cunning, his unparalleled ruthlessness and ferocity were also part of his multiple personalities. A furious roar rang out, and a shockwave that could be seen with the naked eye rippled out, causing the remaining clouds in the surroundings to scatter. Deathwing launched a counterattack. A huge sphere made of pure dark energy appeared between his front claws. The dark light that flowed out of the sphere was like a black hole that attracted the attention of the 4 dragons. Then, he threw the energy sphere behind Alexstrasza to the left, where the other 3 dragons were. The Red Dragon Queen tried to block it, but the terrifying dragon breath that she spewed out had yet to touch the sphere when the dark energy exploded. It suddenly split into 3 huge black arrows of light that drew zigzagging arcs in the sky. They strangely ignored the defense and evasion of the 3 dragons and directly hit their bodies. Bam! This attack caused Isra and the other 2 giant dragons to roll back. Alexstrasza tried to use her dragon tail to slap Nesario, but she was trapped by the acidic mist spewed out from the right hind leg of the Black Dragon King. The corrosive mist with dark power stained her tail, and she had no choice but to spray a small dragon breath on her tail to purify it. After easily forcing the 4 dragons to retreat, Deathwing snarled contemptuously, "Fools! Show me all your ultimate moves. The result will not change. I am the embodiment of power. You are nothing but afterimages of the past in front of me." Nesario's arrogance was justified. When the Titans created the 5 dragon aspects, the strongest was originally Maligos, the king of magic, followed by Nesario, who had the power of the earth. However, after Nesario used Demon Soul to severely injure Maligos, kill the Blue Dragon King, and annihilate almost the entire Blue Dragon race, Nesario became the boss. Now that Demon Soul was destroyed, the 4 dragons had only regained their past power. It did not mean that they had completely recovered from their injuries. Therefore, in terms of individual combat power, the Wing of Death, Nesario, was definitely the well-deserved leader. Moreover, there was another problem. Because they had lost their power for over 10,000 years, the 4 dragon aspects were a little unfamiliar with their own power. Obviously, Nesario didn't understand what it meant to be cool for less than 3 seconds. In the next round, he was about to be taught to be a dragon. Maligos' large-scale magic bombardment interfered with his vision. Nozdorma's slow and Isra's nightmare attack arrived at the same time. Deathwing realized that the Red Dragon Queen had removed another piece of plate armor from his thigh. Intense pain that penetrated deep into his heart. Black Dragon, don't underestimate us opponents from the past. Alexstrasza's crimson shadow filled Deathwing's vision. The 4 great dragons worked together so perfectly that even he was a little surprised. What surprised him even more was that the 4 great dragons, for some reason, knew his weakness very well. Their spells were the same as before, unable to cause any substantial damage to him. With his own strength and the protection of the plate armor embedded under the dragon's skin, no one could hurt him in a direct attack. However, tearing off his alloy plate armor was different. They didn't even need to do anything. His own violent power would destroy him. It would have been fine if it was just once, but 2 consecutive targeted attacks made the Black Dragon King shudder. However, Deathwing wasn't someone who would give up so easily. Even if his weakness was exposed, it didn't mean that he would surrender. The dragon aspect's arrogance and insanity drove him. Ha ha ha. Underestimate? I don't need to underestimate you. What's in front of you is the absolute difference in strength. Your combat skills are far inferior to mine. Nesario turned to look at Isra. The key to your attack is on Isra. As long as I withstand her nightmare, I'll be able to kill her. As long as I withstand her nightmare, you can't do anything to me. The Red Dragon Queen's expression changed. The 4 great dragons understood that no matter who fought Deathwing in close combat, they wouldn't be able to do well. If Isra couldn't make him pause for a short while and reveal a flaw, then it would be difficult to fight this battle. However, of course, they wouldn't believe it. The 4 dragons launched their combined attack again. Unfortunately, as Nesario said, he began to resist Isra's nightmare. He even began to affect Isra in the spiritual domain, causing his crazy dreams to invade Izra. The 4 great dragons tried to make a melee attack, but the effect was terrible. Nesario, who was more agile, used his tail to send Alexstrasza flying. His wings slapped Izra and Maligo's heads, and his left claw opened up a huge hole of more than 20 meters in Nosdorm's chest. If Nosdorm wasn't a dragon made of sand and metal, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't kneel down. Nesario said triumphantly, "Ha ha, so what if you've recovered your strength? The era of the 4 of you is over. After I kill you all, I'll steal all the eggs of your races and create a perfect world that belongs to me." At this time, in the communication circuit that Izra had constructed with dreams, the 4 great dragons were discussing urgently, "What do we do? My magic doesn't have any effect on him." Maligo's was a little discouraged. "I'm too slow. I still can't keep up after slowing him down." Nosdorm gritted his teeth. "If Sister Izra can still control him." Alexstrasza said unwillingly. At this time, Izra suddenly said weakly, "Actually, I still have a dream that I haven't used. That was given to me by Duque." "Why not?" the 3 great dragons said in unison. "Because it's too bad." Izra felt like crying. Maligos, who hated Deathwing the most, immediately asked, "What dream is it? Let me see." Izra hesitated for a second while Wings of Death was talking nonsense, but he still released the dream. The Red Dragon Queen's face couldn't get any redder. Nosdorm said, "This must be noted down." Maligos spat. "TSK, she's not my Dragon Queen, why not send it?" Izra was speechless. Finally Alexstrasza said shyly, "Let's vote. Those who think it can be used raise their claws." 2 firm male claws and 2 weak female dragon claws were raised. "Okay, it's unanimous." The next moment, the 4 great dragon aspects attacked again. This time, Izra released a new nightmare for Nesario. In the dream, a very fake black female dragon was being attacked by a Shiba Inu that was full of Photoshop marks. All of this was not the point. The point was that Nesario immediately recognized that the black female dragon was Sinestra. Well, his wife. Chapter 529. It was the animal world. It was often shown on CCTV. Hadn't they seen a dog that grew up with a lion in the zoo making a scene with a lioness? Those who hadn't seen it should go and make up for it. Was this dirty? No, this was definitely not dirty. People with dirty minds would think of bathing at the sight of water, and would think of beautiful women bathing at the thought of bathing. People with pure minds such as Duque, who was known as the honest and reliable little husband, the pure and flawless Marcus, would never think of such things. It was like a guy who called Brother Chun a man all day long. Who would believe that Brother Chun was a real man? Wasn't that right? In any case, with such a clumsy Photoshop, it was obvious that it was fake. Normally, no one would believe it. Whoever believed it was mentally ill. Well, it just so happened that Nesario was mentally ill, so he believed it. The whispers of the ancient gods had long made him unable to distinguish between illusion and reality, and had driven him crazy. Therefore, he was sometimes cunning, sometimes crazy, and sometimes even he did not know what he was doing. At this moment, what appeared in Nesario's mind was his precious son, Nefarian, and precious daughter Onyxia. The 2 dragon faces had turned into Shiba Inu faces. "Dad, woof woof woof." Nefarian wagged his tail. "Dad, woof woof woof." Onyxia used a Shiba Inu face that came with its own emoji pack to act cute. Then Nesario had a mental breakdown. He, who thought that he had been cuckolded by a Shiba Inu, let out an extremely tragic cry. "No, how could a dog sleep with my dragon queen?" His voice spread everywhere. In a place far away from the battle, all the red dragons watching from afar were dumbfounded at the same time. The 4 dragon aspects immediately pounced on him, taking advantage of his weakness to kill him. Each dragon aspect used all 4 limbs and the claws on their wings, desperately tearing at the armor on the Wings of Death. 3 seconds. The Wings of Death was stunned for a full 3 seconds. When he came back to his senses, he immediately launched a fierce counterattack, but the 4 dragons quickly dodged like frightened sparrows. Nesario's hasty counterattack did not work. "Izra, you're despicable." Nisario's well-founded counterattack left Isra completely speechless. Compared to you who betrayed the entire dragon race, this is nothing, Alexstrasza retorted righteously. Even if it is despicable, it is only because Duque is despicable. It has nothing to do with Isra. The Red Dragon Queen decisively sold out Duque. Duque, who was watching from the sidelines, staggered and fell off his chair. What's going on? Spectators number 2, 3, and 4 were shocked. Alexstrasza, you're not kind. What if Nisario comes looking for trouble with me every day? Duque sent a magic message to the queen. Alexstrasza blushed. Well, her face was red to begin with, so there was nothing wrong with it. The queen immediately replied, "Don't worry, Nisario will not live to see tomorrow's sun. Come on, he's of the earth element. If I hide underground, I won't be able to see him. Don't play word games with me." The others might not know, but Duque was very clear. In the original history, Nisario did not die until many years after the end of World War III. You make it sound like the 4 of us can't kill him. No. Your Majesty, regardless of whether there is a video or not, I have completely offended Deathwing in order to save you. I'm just a little mortal. Once he runs away, he will definitely hunt me down. I'm not afraid of 10,000, but just in case. Can you give me a promise? That thing, right? Alright, I promise you if we really fail, I'll make it happen. Phew. Duque let out a long sigh of relief and pretended that nothing had happened. He sat down again. No, my foot slipped. Who would believe you? Of course, none of them would expose Duque. Only Duque was secretly happy. That thing, if used well, was a real artifact. At this moment, the Battle of the 5 Dragons had resumed. Deathwing had fallen into a real disadvantage. The main reason was that the scene was too shocking to him. A huge opening that lasted for 3 seconds allowed the 4 dragons to peel off at least a dozen pieces of armor from his body. Blood, acid, mist, lava, and all kinds of things splashed out from his open wounds. Now it was not the 4 dragons defeating Deathwing, but Deathwing himself defeating himself. Bastard! Duke Marcus! I shouldn't have used your hand. I should have gotten rid of you from the beginning. Deathwing's roar in the common language resounded throughout the wilderness, and almost all the remaining humans and dwarves heard it. At this moment, Duque finally shivered. Facing the gazes of the 3, Duque straightened his back. That guy played dirty, and I hit him back. That's all. Is that wrong? That's right. The 3 of them answered resolutely, but they sighed in their hearts. You even dared to play with Deathwing. Who else do you not dare to touch? Above, the 4 dragons continued to attack. Maligos laughed. You still want to take revenge on a little human? You should take care of your body first. Accompanied by laughter, the blue dragon attacked again. Obviously, the current Deathwing was different from before. After large pieces of armor were torn apart, Maligos' magic became the most powerful attack. The Blue Dragon King's magic could easily go through the Black Dragon's bloody wounds and directly hurt the Black Dragon's muscles and internal organs. Deathwing struggled pointlessly, trying to get rid of the other dragon's attacks while shouting, "Bastard, don't force me, or you'll regret it." Regret? On the contrary, I'll only regret it if I don't let you taste the pain I've suffered. The Red Dragon Queen did what she said. She began to bring the power of life into her attacks. The power of life that penetrated Deathwing's body aroused a greater reaction from the dark and chaotic power in his body, tearing his flesh even more violently. In the face of other attacks, even Isra's nightmare, Deathwing could still put up some resistance. But in the face of Alexstrasza's power of life, he could do nothing. Her attacks were accompanied by pain. Deathwing had never experienced the pain of his body being torn apart by a completely different power. The pain flared up in places where claws and fangs could not reach, biting deep in his life. This most terrifying dragon in the world suddenly let out a shrill cry that no one had ever heard before. Ow, 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 ow. This sound contained the power of the whispers of the ancient gods. This scream saved him. The other dragons were shocked by the cry and stopped their spells. Deathwing finally broke free from the encirclement and turned to escape. He flew away at a very fast speed. Although his whole body was still trembling, and he was still screaming, he finally succeeded in quickly disappearing from sight. Chapter 530. Seeing the arrogant wings of death suddenly use the ultimate move, soaring dragon flash, and actually run away with its tail between its legs, every dragon was dumbfounded. Nethario ran away just like that? What happened to the glory of the dragon race? What happened to the resistance to the end? This was not right. We can't let him escape. Nozdormus suddenly came to a realization. Give chase now. Maligos replied anxiously. Agreed, the Queen of Dreams said calmly. Isra looked at Alexstrasza, who was still circling. Even she was in disbelief at how she had torn the Black Dragon King apart. Sister, chase, the Red Dragon replied. We have to chase him to the death. Otherwise I'll be in trouble. The Red Dragon Queen thought of Duque's jinx. If she could not deal with Nethario here, she would owe Duque a huge debt. The 4 dragon aspects flapped their wings at the same time, and continuously sped up to chase the rebellious Black Dragon. Ah, it's gone. Gavin Rad, who was watching the show, looked at the empty sky in shock. I'm still researching how many Breaking Dawn spells each of their moves is equivalent to. Ronan was very professional. What a beautiful firework. Sasha was mischievous. There are more on the ground over there. Duque, who was even more mischievous, pointed at the tribal camp that had been burned to ashes in the distance. Yes, the 5 powerhouses were fighting in the sky, and hundreds of red dragons were cleaning the ground. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. So clean. More than 10 red dragons would descend side by side, like a plane scattering pesticides, covering the entire area. Under the accurately calculated dragon's breath, the scorching flames covered the entire orc camp, leaving nothing behind and no blind spots. When the extremely hot dragon's breath passed, there was not even a struggling man on fire. It was all charred black. Other than the orcs on the outermost periphery of the camp, not many orcs had the chance to escape. However, only the strongest orc clan could occupy the best territory. The flatter and more convenient the territory was, the more powerful the clan would occupy it. Whether it was territory or camp, this had been the rule since ancient times. The result was that almost all the second-tier clans were burned in this battle. Not many of the unranked clans in the periphery escaped. Seeing that there weren't many orcs, the furious red dragons didn't bother to use their dragon breath. They swooped down and picked up the orcs, throwing them high into the sky. Then the orcs screamed, "Ah!" Some of the orcs just stood there, sweeping their dragon claws from the left and slapping their dragon wings from the right, killing the orcs like how humans would kill cockroaches. The spectators, who had moved their seats to the edge of the cliff at the top of the mountain, had a great time watching. Gigi, that dragon looks like a newbie. The angle of its dive is terrible, and it can't really use up its dragon breath. Duque made a professional comment. At that moment, Sidan Dathrahan and General Abendis arrived. Duque asked, "Where are Uther and Tyrion?" Sidan was stunned for a moment, then she smiled. To be honest, among the first generation of paladins, only the 3 from Stormwind were close to Duque. These paladins from Lordaeron were only slightly closer to Duque than nodding acquaintances. But Sidan was a friendly person. He didn't care about etiquette and shrugged. "Oh, they're very responsible, unlike a certain deputy commander who slacks off after settling the big things." Sidan's teasing of Duque made Gavin Rad's face turn red. The rest of the assault team was clearly still fighting the stubborn orcs in the passage of the fortress, but they were just spectators. It was a little unkind at the end of the day. Who knew that Duque would be so thick-skinned? Don't abuse the old. I'm old, and it's already amazing that I can complete the mission. I can't fight anymore. The world will belong to you young people in the future. The old man's tone caused the people around him to burst into laughter. But seeing Duque's appearance, Sidan and Abendis couldn't laugh anymore. Most of his hair was white, and the skin on his arms was a little shriveled. When he smiled, his face was full of wrinkles. It was hard to imagine that Duque was actually just a 17-year-old young man. "Sir Marcus, your curse." Abendis stopped halfway through his sentence. Duque smiled. The Red Dragon Queen just lifted the curse for me. You've worked hard, Your Excellency. Abendis bowed heavily. Not only that, I'm also very grateful for your help at such a crucial time. Beside him, Sidan bowed together. At this time, it wasn't just Abendis. Everyone present felt the same. Duque had really worked hard. The entire continent, the 10 countries, and the 3 major races added up to almost 10 million people. It was unbelievable that such a thin young man had to bear such a heavy burden. This was the fortune of the alliance. But in a sense, it was also their tragedy. It was precisely because so many kings couldn't come to an agreement that the compromise that seemed so terrible before, but now seemed so wise, letting Anduin and Duque take power. Gavin Rad looked at the destroyed orc camp in the distance with hope in his eyes. If that's the case, maybe the war will end in a year. A year? Duque pursed his lips. The war will end with the Alliance's victory in 4 months. Everyone was shocked. Such a large-scale war between the Alliance and the Horde. And Duque actually said it would end in 4 months? Abendis was the most sensitive about the situation. 4 months. We don't know how many orc reinforcements there are on the other side of the dark portal. Your Excellency, isn't this too? Duque waved his hand. No, 4 months is already a conservative estimate. But it's good that everyone knows this. Don't spread it for now. As for the rest, I'll tell the kings at the throne meeting. At this moment, everyone's eyes were shining with excitement and ecstasy. If someone else had said it, they might have scoffed. But who was the one who said it? It was the deputy commander of the Alliance, the invincible and outstanding military strategist, and the Alliance's hero Duke Marcus. From the first prediction of the Horde's attack on South Shore to the defense line at the South Stream coast, the Battle of the Hinterlands, the Battle of Cuel Salis, and the Battle of Lordaeron, Duque's military theory of killing the enemy is the most important, had led the Alliance from a disadvantage where all the kings had fallen to the Horde to a path of total victory. If his judgment was still wrong, who else in the Alliance could believe in the inference of the war situation? Really? Sasha was overjoyed. Then what are we waiting for? Quickly go back and tell everyone this news. And, Big Sis must be anxious. Duque's facial muscles twitched. I still have to wait for the Red Dragon Queen. I need her to help me recover the life I lost. Otherwise, how can I face people like this? Chapter 531. Duque had never been handsome. Compared to Lothar in the movie, he was much less handsome. But this didn't mean that Duque had to accept himself as an old man. Looking at the white-haired Khadgar in the movie, Duque was already pissed. Now that he had become himself, who could stand a transmigrator suddenly turning into an old man? Fortunately, he still had the Red Dragon Queen as a backup. Alexstrasza, who had bestowed the World Tree with life, and the Night Elves with eternal life, could easily make up for his losses. However, Duque didn't expect Sasha to suddenly say, "Don't worry. No matter what you become, I'll still like you." Pfft. The group of single dogs around him all spat out. A group of people stared straight at Duque, as if they wanted to gouge out a piece of flesh from Duque's face. In public, Duque's behavior left people speechless. In private, wasn't it enough that he had Aurelia? He even went after his sister-in-law when most of his men were still single. Did he still have any humanity left? Fine, you're powerful. Go ahead and do it. But do you have to show off your love in front of us? Don't you know that showing off your love is faster? All of a sudden, the guys wanted to borrow flamethrowers from the FFF guild to burn Duque too. Duque was dumbfounded. You don't have to do that even if you want to attract hatred. Will anyone protect me in the future? The innocent Sasha blinked her eyes, as if she did not understand why the atmosphere had suddenly become so strange. Gavinrad blinked. Boss, give me a piece of land in the Elven Forest. I'll forget about the trauma you caused me today. Duque quickly agreed. Okay. As for the other 2 singles, Sidan and Abendis, Duque promised to invite them to the Dream Angel Salon in Lordaeron for 3 days. What was a Dream Angel? Even though Sidan gave Duque a you-know-what-I-mean look, a pure, holy, and upright person like Duque certainly wouldn't understand. Blarg. Well, I'm still a 17-year-old kid. Regardless of whether others believed it or not, Duque believed it himself. To Duque's surprise, the Red Dragon Queen did not appear even after he waited until nightfall. Who knew if they chased Nesario from the Eastern Kingdom, all the way to Northrend in the north, then flew to the Kalimdor continent, then circled around Pantalia, and completed the magnificent feat of flying around the world. Needless to say, the 5 silly guardian dragons with almost unlimited stamina, and driven by their deep hatred might really be able to do it. With no other choice, Duque could only open the portal and return to the Dalajan first. What he didn't know was that the Dalajan know almost all the major cities in the Alliance's territory that received the latest news were in an uproar. The Alliance's deputy commander Duke Marcus has liberated the Red Dragon Queen from the evil orcs. 200,000 orcs under the Grimbader fortress in the wetlands have been killed by the Red Dragon's dragon breath. The horde has suffered a crushing defeat and has begun to retreat from the earthy highlands. The Red Dragon army has become the humans' ally again. The Alliance has won. Cheering crowds could be seen everywhere. People were shouting, cheering, and roaring at the sky in ecstasy. Whose tears were flying? Whose smile was in full bloom? As long as one was wearing the Alliance's uniform, be it a 60-year-old uncle or a teenage boy, they would definitely be warmly welcomed by the people. There was an old man holding a collection of fine wine, a beautiful young lady who was as passionate as fire, and a smiling child. Everyone was praising the Alliance in their own way. However, this had nothing to do with Lordaeron. After sending out 1,000 people and 250 people, only 192 people returned alive, including those who had lost arms and legs, and could no longer fight on the battlefield. The actual loss was more than 90%. It was no exaggeration to say that the elites of Lordaeron were almost burned to the ground. If they had paid such a huge sacrifice in exchange for an equivalent merit, King Tyrrhenas of Lordaeron might feel better. The point was, most of those who came back alive were the paladins of the Silver Hand. Fairness and honesty were the virtues. The paladins of the Supreme Creed. These guys would never lie. They would say to everyone they met, "We launched a surprise attack at the worst possible time. We encountered the main force of the horde. If it wasn't for Sir Marcus's help, we would have been completely wiped out." Duque. And it was still Duque. It was as if as long as Duque was still alive, Lordaeron would not be able to rise again. Lordaeron had paid an unimaginably high price for this. More than 1,000 elite knights, mages, priests, hunters, and bandits had died. What did they get in exchange? A wrong time to launch a surprise attack. Tyrrhenas almost spat out a mouthful of blood. So the Lordaeron had paid such a heavy price in exchange for a successful feint attack? If these 1,000 people were put on the battlefield, they would definitely be able to open up new territories. He died quietly in the fortress of Grimbator. It could be said that a general's success was built on 10,000 bones. Damn it, Duque had become a general. Why did the people of Lordaeron have to be the 10,000 bones? When he heard the complete news, Tyrrhenas choked on his breath. He coughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. He coughed so hard that he almost coughed his lungs out. He was bitter. He hated it. He used to hate the horde that turned the Silverpine forest into scorched earth. Now he suddenly realized that he hated Duque even more, who always stole the limelight from Lordaeron. Before this, he had never imagined that there would be a day when he, the king of the strongest kingdom on the continent, would be jealous of a young man who once had nothing. At this moment, he even wanted to assassinate Duque, but he did not dare to do so. Duque, who had returned from hell, was already the #1 hero of the Alliance. And look at Stormwind's attitude. If he dared to touch Duque, Lang would definitely send out 200,000 troops to fight him. The kingdoms that were on good terms with Duque would definitely not sit back and watch. Tyrrhenas secretly gritted his teeth and swallowed his anger. On the other side, Stormwind held a grand welcome ceremony for Duque's return. Duque! Lang rushed up to Duque the moment he stepped out of the portal and gave Duque a bear hug. Cough, cough, cough. Let me go. Duque's face was pale. As soon as Lang let go, Anduin immediately followed up. Duque! Cough, cough, cough. I'm dying. Duque's face was pale. "Duque, what's wrong?" Duke Bolvar wanted to take the third hit, but he was shocked to find that Duque was almost dead. It was a mess. Chapter 532. Only those who had almost lost it would cherish it. It was precisely because Lang thought that he was about to lose Duque, his most staunch and powerful supporter since the destruction of the Storm Kingdom, that Lang's mood fell into the abyss. Now don't be fooled by Duke's pitiful appearance. Under the premise that Duke's life wasn't in danger, Duke's pitiful appearance was just a bit of entertainment. The haze of the nightmare had dissipated. A brilliant future was in front of him. How could Lang not cry with joy? That's right. King Lang's eyes were red and moist. Countless pairs of eyes were focused on Duque, who was teasing the king and his ministers. General Tom Seamus looked at Duque, took a deep breath, and roared in a loud and majestic voice. To the hero of the alliance, the Grand Duke of Stormwind, His Excellency Duke Marcus. 3,000 Stormwind soldiers, in a uniform movement, followed General Seamus, drew their swords out of their sheaths, raised their hands to the sky, and saluted Duque in unison. At this moment, the sword light was like a forest, swallowing mountains and rivers. To His Excellency Marcus. The domineering shout echoed throughout the Dalajan city. These soldiers were not just guards of honor. They came from all over Stormwind, from the most elite Griffin Legion, to the local garrison, to the militia with minimal military training, and even to the refugees who came to South Shore with the refugee fleet. But now they all had a unified name, Stormwind Elite Soldiers. Each of their hands was stained with the blood of at least 5 orc warriors. They were not only the elites of Stormwind, but also first-class soldiers in the entire alliance. Strong, firm, with combat skills and iron discipline. However, it was such a soldier that everyone's voice carried a sense of worship. Although Duque had long since stopped directly commanding the army of Stormwind, and even the private corps he led alone reached as many as 30,000 people, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the king's subordinate, but the mention of the name Duke Marcus still made people in awe. To the people of Storm, it was he who subdued the Bloodsail fleet and saved 600,000 civilians from certain death under the noses of hundreds of thousands of orcs. It was him who brought life-saving food to the 600,000 starving refugees and opened up countless wastelands in the Hillsbrad Hills so that the people could live a peaceful life. To the Storm soldiers, the burning of Stormwind City, the ambush at Barradine Bay, the first and second defense of South Shore, the Battle of the Hinterlands, the defense of Lordaeron, and the battle to save the Red Dragon Queen. Duque's name was equal to the glory of a warrior, equal to a miracle. He was synonymous with the god of war. Such a legendary figure was only 17 years old. Looking at Duque's white hair, looking at the wrinkles on Duque's hand that looked like an old man's, thinking of the curse he had received, thinking of the suffering he had to endure for this destroyed kingdom, every soldier's eyes were as red as King Lang's. A sea appeared in front of Duque. It was a sea constructed by the gleam of swords. The sharp swords were raised at a 45-degree angle. As Lang, Anduin, and Duque moved forward, they suddenly parted one by one. It was like the miracles of a sword parting the sea in a legend. The sea parted. At the end of the sea, the king and his 2 ministers sat in an open carriage and slowly set off towards the violet square in the center of the Dalajan kingdom. Although the sky was dark, cheers could be heard on both sides of the road. Countless Dalajan people, mage apprentices, and mages crowded on both sides of the road, trying to see the glory of the #1 legendary mage in the alliance. If it was anyone else, even if he was a king, the Dalajan mages would not be so revered. This was an era where the spirit of chivalry was the most revered. Looking at the 7 human kingdoms, except for the Dalajan, no king was a mage. In most human settlements, only the general who led the army to charge would be recognized as a true hero. Mages, on the other hand, were just mysterious people who hid in the protection of the army and released sinister magic. In a sense, it was precisely because of the prejudice of the majority that Duque, a mage hero, was even more precious. Duque was the Grand Duke of Stormwind, but was that important? Didn't they see that even the Prince of Kuel Salis was mingling in the Dalajan? As long as he was a hero in the field of magic, he would naturally be warmly welcomed by the Dalajan people. In their opinion, Duque, who had once lectured in the Dalajan, was undoubtedly a member of the Dalajan. Duque! 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 The uniform shouts were like a tsunami, rising and falling one after another. The scene and atmosphere made King Lang, who sat opposite Duque, and Anduin, who sat beside Duque, become foils. Of course, neither of them cared. They just smiled at Duque. Duque gently waved his right hand, while his left raised the marshal's combat staff from Antonidas. Even after the direct attack of the wings of Death's shadow flames, and such a violent explosion, there was not a single scratch left on it. The staff was still shining with silver light. The head of a winged horse was carved on the staff, emitting a faint silver light. It looked extremely holy and beautiful. When Duque raised the shining staff made by the Dalajan, the crowd's cheers reached its peak. In the square, the representatives of the 9 countries of the Alliance, except for Stormwind, had already gathered. Looking at Duque, every king and every representative had a complicated feeling. They did not expect Duque to do it. With his almost dead body, he led a small team of 5 and penetrated thousands of miles behind enemy lines. He sneaked into the heavily guarded Grim Battle Fortress, while the Red Dragon patrolled in the sky, and the Beastmen roamed the wetlands. He cleverly used the Wings of Death's plot to complete the feat of liberating the Red Dragon Queen. If Duque could be said to be a wise man and a commander who only knew how to command, the current Duque was like a real hero who had been quenched in a furnace. After a real test, he was reborn and became a real hero of the Alliance. His reputation as a hero had been completely established. No matter what happened to Duque in the future, he would become an indelible legend in the history of the Alliance. No matter how much the king of Turinas secretly mocked Duque, he had to put on a smile and welcome Duque. However, an accident that no one could have imagined happened at this moment. An abrupt voice suddenly rang out in front of the drum music. Duque, you have become a hero. You also told us that the Red Dragon Legion is no longer a part of the tribe. So, I want to ask you, who should I look for to avenge my son's death? If it was some blind pawn, perhaps he would have been dragged out and killed by the angry soldiers after saying this. But the person who said this was King Kurtira's Dalen Proudmoore. Chapter 533. As soon as these words came out, the entire place went silent. Everyone could understand the anger of a father who had lost his son. Everyone could understand the sadness of a king who had lost his heir. Since ancient times, it had always been a sad thing for a white-haired person to send off a black-haired person. But this was the Alliance Conference. Honoring Duque, the hero of the Alliance, was the most important ceremony to show the might of the Alliance after all the suffering he had brought to the Horde. Look, even though the Rotterdam Kingdom had suffered the worst loss, Turinas still stood there with a look of pride on his face. What's more, this was the Crimson Dragon army, which had extraordinary power. If the Queen was angry, the entire human race would be destroyed, and all the major human cities would cease to exist. Humans would once again split into countless small clans, and return to the position of being at the mercy of others 3,000 years ago. In the end, the Crimson Dragon army was being threatened, and there were not so many ancient red dragons coming out to harm the Alliance. Otherwise, the Alliance would have been destroyed. Now that you, a mere King Kultiras, have caused a ruckus at this time, who would want to please you? Who would dare to support you? Silence. Deathly silence. In fact, Dalen knew that he would not be supported by any country. He also knew that he should be like Turinas and swallow his anger. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it. As soon as he closed his eyes, he saw his eldest son, Drake, being burned to ashes by the raging flames. His son's soul haunted his soul. He could not swallow this, not as a father, but as a king. Even though he knew that it was not the right time to say it, he felt that if he did not say it today, he would never have the courage to say it again. He would not have the right to be a father. The air was freezing. The temperature was dropping. Dalen's eyes were filled with tears as he knelt on the cold floor. Perhaps this was a plea, or perhaps it was a form of self-repentance. In any case, he ignored everyone's gaze and disrupted the festive atmosphere. He knelt there. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him, a figure wearing a mage robe. Other than Antonidas, there was only one person who had the right to wear a mage robe and stand in front of him, Duque. In his heart, Duque was the man who had sacrificed the lives of millions to become a hero. Sigh. Duque patted Dalen's shoulder and said something that not only Dalen, but all the other kings did not dare to believe. Dalen, get up. I'll get Alexstrasza to give you an explanation. What? To make the Red Dragon queen, one of the world's 5 dragon aspects. Give an explanation to the king of a mere human kingdom? What kind of joke was this? It was like asking a lion to apologize to the ant's relatives for accidentally stepping on it, and then asking the lion to apologize to the ant's relatives. Since ancient times, who wouldn't admit that they were unlucky to encounter such an extraordinary existence? It was one thing for Dalen to go crazy. Duque was going to join him in his madness? What if they infuriated the Crimson Dragon army and caused these abnormal lizards to stand against humans again? Anyone who could become a king was no longer a brute. At this moment, almost all the kings were going crazy. Antonidas could clearly sense that Duque had already sent out a magic message. Wait for 10 minutes. The Crimson Dragon race will give the Alliance an explanation. An explanation? There really was one. Since ancient times, anyone who slayed a dragon would definitely be regarded as a hero by the entire human world. Only the truly high-ranking people knew that those who were slain were lone dragons. They were either banished by the dragons for committing a crime, or they were the descendants of the black dragon that the 4-colored dragons did not like. Now, all the kings and representatives were dumbfounded. They stared at the sky blankly. King Dalen looked at Duque in disbelief. After making sure that Duque's face did not show any signs of lying, he stood up with his sword. Facing the night wind, he stared at the pitch-black sky quietly. 10 minutes. Usually, it would be over in a moment. Unfortunately, the oppressive atmosphere made the passage of time extremely slow. Everyone's forehead was dripping with sweat. Everyone was quietly waiting for their judgment, waiting for the one that might appear in the sky. Around 9 minutes later, the moonlight suddenly dimmed. The bright moonlight was blocked by a huge creature. As expected, it was a dragon. It spread its wings, and its scales shone with a dazzling red light. The huge golden vertical pupils seemed to be flowing with blazing lava. The 2 pairs of fiery horns on his high head were raised high, looking down at the monarchs in the violet square from high above. Compared to this terrifying creature that came from the ancient times more than 10,000 years ago, the armies of the mortal world, status, and power all seemed insignificant. When the dragons soared in the clouds, humans were just ants crawling on the ground. The sky was their domain, and they ruled over the sky. Even though it was easy for different races to have facial blindness, after many days of fighting, every alliance had recognized every single characteristic of this most ferocious ancient dragon. There was no mistake. He was Tyrannes, the one who had sent over 10,000 alliance soldiers into the Sea of Fire. Every alliance soldier nervously clenched their weapons. The higher-ups had indeed announced that the Red Dragon army was no longer an enemy. But who knew if this ferocious lizard would suddenly go berserk? The Dalajan's magic defense system could indeed destroy him. But before this behemoth crashed to the ground, how many people would be killed by him? No one was sure. However, under the watchful eyes of more than 100,000 people, Tyrannes, who had just landed on the specially empty space in Violet Square, suddenly began to shrink. A dragon that could easily weigh more than 1,000 tons became the size of a human. No matter how many times Duque saw this situation, he still felt that it was magical. It was full of all kinds of unscientific things. Of course, pursuing science in a magical world was not a reliable thing to begin with. What appeared in front of the kings was an old man with long white hair, a white beard and white eyebrows. He was not wearing a piece of armor, only a Greek-like cloth skirt around his waist. His upper body was bare, revealing a strong but full of scars. Who is it? The one who claims to want the ancient dragon Tyrannes To give him an explanation? Don't make it easy for me to find you. Come out yourself. The humanoid dragon released a fierce aura, with a dragon's roar that made countless people tremble. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.